February 22nd, 2024. Before we begin, I'll ask our Deputy Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Jamie Johnson, to provide a safety contact.
Thank you, Chair Drummer. Today, the committee will be provided an update on our paratransit service, Metro Access. Accessibility in public transit is crucial for older adults and individuals with a lived experience of disability. Metro makes efforts in multiple areas, Metro Access, Metro Rail and Metro Bus, to ensure those with accessibility needs can travel safely, independently and with dignity, facilitating their inclusion in participation in society. I wish to provide some safety advice to support the safe travel of individuals in these demographics. You can familiarise yourself with the accessibility features of Metro stations and buses by consulting the Metro Accessibility page at www.womata.com. You can engage in Metro's travel training programs to acquire skills for navigating Metro Bus and Metro Rail safely. And we encourage you to get more involved by exploring the option of joining or participating in the Accessibility Advisory Committee, which actively contributes to enhancing Metro safety and accessibility standards. For all this information and more, please contact the Department of System-Wide Accessibility at access@womata.com or contact Metro's General Customer Service number on 202-637-7000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good morning again, and welcome to our Safety and Operations Committee's meeting today. Since this is our first public session of the day, I'll ask Ms. Ellison, our Board Corporate Secretary, to call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Drummer.
Here.
Vice Chair Martin Proctor.
Present.
Director Lowe.
Here.
Director Smedberg.
Present.
Alternate Director Goldman.
Here.
Director Klein.
Here.
Director Santos.
Present.
And Director Letourneau.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of our minutes from our January 25th meeting. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as well. We have several updates on today's agenda in the form of 4 presentations. The first update is on 3 rail safety related items: return to duty processes for train operators, red signal overruns, and an after action review of the smoke event at Eastern Market last week. The second presentation will be an update on Metro Access paratransit service. The third is a service excellence update for the second quarter of 2024, ending in December 2023. And our final topic today will be an update on wayfinding, on the wayfinding pilot this committee discussed in September, along with other customer service improvements. Related to this item, Board Member Klein has a board-approved declaration on file and is able to participate fairly and objectively in the interests of WMATA. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Johnson and Ms. Wilkerson to start us off.
Thank you. So we have 3 updates today. Shanita Wilkinson's the Senior Vice President of Rail Transportation, and myself, the Senior Vice President of Safety. Really, we wanted to highlight in this first slide, being excellent at delivering our service is about transparency with you, the board, and the public. And we are bringing to you 3 issues today that we've identified. They're emerging issues, and we want to tell you what we're doing about them. So it's absolutely clear, and the public and our riders have confidence in us. So the 3 topics you've already highlighted are about return to duty process and red signal overruns for involving train operators mainly. So Shanita will be talking to those, and then an update, a debrief on the incident Eastern Market last week. So I'll hand it over to Shanita.
Good morning. I'd like to start off today's presentation by discussing train operator certification and the return to duty process. Metro currently has over 600 train operators. They are required to go through extensive training and to be certified to operate a train. Training and certification begins with new operator training. New operator training is delivered by Technical Training and Development and consists of 12 weeks of instruction and 5 weeks of on-the-job training. Once new operator training is completed, the trained operator goes for certification, which is delivered by Rail Services. Certification includes 2 written exams and 1 practical exam. At that point, the trained operator is assigned work and can operate a train. Every 2 years, each train operator must recertify and be retrained through a refresher program. That process consists of 5 days of refresher training and retaking the recertification exams. As you can see, the return to duty process is one piece of current training and the certification processes. It only occurs after long-term absences, and that is when an employee has been off the property 30 days or more. Train operators must take refresher training depending on the length of their absence, meaning if you're gone for 30 days, that retraining may be 2 to 3 days. If you've gone for over 2 years, the retraining may be the entire train operator course again. At that point, there should be a verification that the certification is current. However, earlier this month, Rail Operations found that this verification was not occurring as intended and was creating a gap in the return to duty processes. The gap resulted in 3 train operators returning to work from long-term absences, even though their certifications had expired. The gap in the process. When employees are absent for 30 days or more, they become inactive in the system and are not able to work. Upon returning to duty from a long absence, in addition to receiving medical clearance, a train operator must complete the required refresher training and have a current recertification. The 3 train operators found with expired recertifications all had long-term absences, and some were off work for over 2 years, returned, went back out prior to completing their training. All 3 operators did receive the required training once they finally returned to work. But the return to duty process did not verify the operator's recertification was current. For the 3 operators, their recertification had in fact expired. When Rail Operations found the operators out of compliance, they were immediately removed from service and scheduled for recertification. As of today, 1 train operator has been recertified, 1 is recertifying today, and the other one tomorrow. So by the end of the week, all 3 train operators will be recertified. So what are we doing about it? Rail Operations is working to make sure that the gaps in the return to duty process are closed quickly and do not continue. Immediately after discovering train operators with expired recertifications, Audit and Compliance began an independent audit to ensure that no other train operators are out of compliance. Rail Training and Rail Operations work together to update the current return to duty training document request form, and that includes a hard verification for train operators' recertification status. So on the actual form now, there is a box that the recertification date must be included, and it must be a verification between the manager and the training department prior to the employee returning back to their home division. Digital modernization is helping to automate the return to duty process and convert all documents to electronic forms. In the very near future, we will utilize the functionality in Trapeze, and Trapeze is the system where work is assigned to operators that will automatically turn off the ability to assign a operator work if the recertification has expired. Metro is using the gap in the return to duty process as an opportunity also to reevaluate the certification program overall. In addition to the audit being conducted by Audit and Compliance, Safety and Readiness is conducting a complementary audit of operator certification records and to identify opportunities to improve the processes and standardization. Safety and Readiness is also working to expedite the realignment of moving certification to technical training and development. Once completed, all elements of the training and certification that we reviewed earlier will be under one department. Finally, Safety and Readiness will review and rewrite the performance standards for train operator certification, and the revised process will be implemented by June 30th of this year. Return to ATO will reduce red signal overruns. So to give an update on that, the second topic on red signal overruns, we have identified a trend. The number of red signal overruns have increased compared to years in the past. Red signal overruns are a serious incident, and we take them very seriously. Any variation from 0, we would like to have no red signal overruns, is always a concern for us. We are implementing several mitigations that I will walk through. What is a red signal overrun? A red signal overrun is when a train passes a red signal without the authority of the rail traffic controller. There has been 7 revenue trains that overran signals this past year, and most recently, we've had 2 in the last week. Returning to ATO. We're expecting to begin ATO in non-revenue simulating ATO service starting spring of 2024. As previously discussed with the board, as we know, ATO is our safest mode of operations. ATO will not allow operators to go past a red signal and decrease opportunity for miscommunication and lack of familiarization, and decrease or remove the human error factor. As ATO will not be immediately implemented, rail operations is taking several steps to reduce the risk of red signal overruns on mainline. Rail operations utilize the newly established Uniform Rules Compliance Program, also known as the URCP, to continuously evaluate and monitor the red signal overrun incidents. The URCP is a cross-departmental effort that utilizes internal audit and data to track compliance and performance trends at a macro level. For example, URPC will analyze data from Speed Command audits from that rail transportation is executing. A Speed Command is a signal that trains pick up from the tracks that tells the operator what speed they're allowed to go. When we perform an audit of this kind, the control center sends a signal of 0 speed that indicates to the train operator that they must stop their train. Compliant behavior would be that the operator stops the train and contacts the control center. Non-compliant behavior is that the train operator continues to move the train. This emulates what we expect from the train operator if they are given a red signal, but in a safer environment. So in other words, if you come to a stop sign in your car, you will stop. If you come to a red signal stoplight, you will stop. Those are indications that tells you that you should not move even in your personal car. And that correlates right back to what we do on the railroad. Through the URCP, rail operations will be able to see how effective the audit is. We will also be able to assess our communication campaign. Rail operations established to refresh operators' rules and procedures. We will be also increasing supervisor oversight of train operators and communication through one-on-one conversations. And we'll continue our practice of adjusting training based on frequency of events and lessons learned from these events. Finally, rail operations will be implementing point and call, and we're very excited about that. This practice is exactly how it sounds. You point and you call out what you see. The operator will physically point to operating conditions and call it out. It has been shown to ensure operators are mentally present rather than going through the motions. Point and call defensive operations is famously used in Japan and New York City. In Japan, they do not only use it in their transportation field, but they use it in their hospitals prior to nurses giving out medications. They look at the medicine, they point it out, they call to make sure they are giving out the correct medication. It is an industry best practice and supported by APTA research. Rail Transportation plans to implement point and call for signals, speed commands, and door operations initially before expanding to other operating conditions. That training for point and call will begin in March. In this case, an operator using point and call for signals will point to the signal and say out loud whether they have the right to proceed. So they look at the signal, point at it. If it's red, they will call it out and bring it to their attention that they are to remain in place and contact the control center. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shanita. So moving to the third topic, I wish to provide the board and the public with an update on the incident Eastern Market and also the subsequent investigation. So on Thursday, February the 15th, at just before 1 o'clock, a Silver Line 7000 series train en route to Ashburn pulled into Eastern Market Station. Earlier in its run, one of the train's collector shoe assemblies, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about what that is, had dislodged and grounded just after Stadium Armory, which in turn caused a second collector shoe assembly on the same rail car to fail and ground when the train pulled into Eastern Market platform. And this caused an arcing, so a flash and a bang, and smoke and fire in the station, which many of you will have seen on media outlets. The response to the incident was swift. The train operator immediately informed Metro Integrated Command and Communication Center of the incident, and emergency response resources were deployed. The station manager and Metro's 2 contracted security officers on duty at the station helped to evacuate the 31 passengers aboard the train and the remaining customers from the station within 2 minutes. To clear the smoke, this is an important point, the powerful station fans were activated correctly within a minute of the incident occurring. This rapid action was a result of a well-practiced and improved process now in place in Metro following lessons learned from the L'Enfant Plaza incident in 2015. Metro Transit Police were on scene within 2 minutes, and DC Fire were on scene within 5 minutes, stationed 200 yards from Eastern Market. 9 customers were evaluated by DC medics outside the station, with one of the contracted security officers transported to hospital for treatment for smoke inhalation. Other Metro personnel responded to assist the recovery and investigation, namely Metro's power, track and signals teams on the infrastructure side, and then members of Shanita's team on the rail transportation side, and bus transportation personnel, importantly, who established a bus bridge to move passengers between stations on the blue, orange and silver lines, as well as safety investigators from my team and the emergency preparedness support. The Metro Integrated Command and Communication Center coordinated with Metro's external communications team to ensure a service pattern was maintained and communicated to passengers. An internal after-action review is scheduled for tomorrow, which will focus on the emergency incident response efforts and provide an opportunity to identify lessons learned that, if there are any, we can make improvements. So that's the summary of the response. What I'd like to do now is to provide you an update on the investigation. So before I walk through this slide, I wanted to provide some context on the investigation. In response to this incident, staff from operations, infrastructure, and safety and readiness have engaged in extensive and continual communications to investigate what had contributed to the incident. And I think it's also useful at this point to explain what a collector shoe is. So we've got on the bottom right, a collector shoe that's attached to the train. You can see a mechanic working on a collector shoe above that. I see a collector shoe in 3 parts. You have the piece of flat metal, which is spring-loaded and makes contact with the third rail. That draws the power, 750 volts, through that piece of metal into what I would call the block in the center. There's a fuse and there's wires that can take that power from the third rail into the train to run the propulsion, the brakes, the lights. And then you can see, and this is important, you can see the surround. It's a fiberglass surround in this photo, which is the casing that protects the collector shoe assembly and assures, if it does arc, which does occur, that it doesn't spark and reach the train. The red, exactly. In incidences where collector shoe damage occurs, it is often, not always, the case that an obstruction on the track or anomaly in the third rail may have caused the collector shoe to be dislodged or damaged. That's common. So the first steps in the investigation explored that theory with extensive inspections of the track and third rail by our track and power specialists, walking the Silver Line and also using the track geometry vehicle to verify track dimensions. Track geometry vehicle is a piece of technology which basically measures the track, horizontal and vertical dimensions, to ensure everything is what it should be. No findings have led us to conclude at this point that a track or third rail obstruction is the cause. So at the same time, attention was paid to the rail cars. The chief mechanical officer and his team of engineers in charge of the rail cars instigated a visual inspection of all 7,000 series rail cars and downloaded the data from the incident train. It's almost like the black box with an aeroplane. You can download huge amounts of data which tells you what every rail car has done and how it's behaved. The engineers then developed an enhanced, more in-depth inspection of the collector shoe assembly, which is more intrusive than the industry standard and beyond what the original equipment manufacturer recommends. So we really wanted to zero in on that collector shoe assembly to understand what was happening. This special inspection of all in-service 7,000 series rail cars concluded on Tuesday, and 48 collector shoe assemblies were identified as having fractures of the fiberglass mounting bracket or arc shield, which is the red piece on the screen. This is a failure rate of 1.8%. As a result of this finding, all those collector shoe assemblies with fractures will be replaced before being returned to service, and a similar inspection has been initiated on the 2, 3, and 6,000 series legacy fleets. These legacy inspections will continue through the weekend as ongoing required corrective, preventative, and inspection maintenance activities on the entirety of the fleet must continue concurrently. So let's go back to the track as we move down this slide. At the same time, based on the fractures identified, track inspections using that track geometry vehicle that I mentioned have been expanded to the red line, which occurred on Tuesday night. We did the orange line last night, but we're probably going to redo it because there was a software glitch, and then the green line later this week. To ensure there are no suspect track conditions on lines where trains with collector shoe fractures have run. Again, at this point, no findings have led us to conclude that there was a track or third rail defect as the cause. So all those results so far have come in as negative. The task now is to understand the probable cause of these fractures to the collector shoe assemblies. The Chief Mechanical Officer has met with the original equipment manufacturer, and his team is conducting extensive analysis of historical maintenance data to rapidly understand the nature and reasons behind these fractures. And WMSC have participated in the investigation and received regular updates throughout. So the last section of this slide talks about the operational side of our response. So while understanding the probable cause is a priority, what is critical for me and the rest of the team is ensuring the safe operation of rail cars in service. So those continual conversations between operations, infrastructure, and safety have continued as we assess new information as it has arisen this week. The fleet is safe to run in service because of multiple proactive actions we've taken. For these trains that have been inspected, they are on an interval to be re-inspected, and those engineers will continue to reassess processes based on the findings and the data. Really, we want to wait until we've got the whole data set from the 7,000 series and the legacy fleets before we can be sure of what next steps need to be taken. Rail Transportation in Shanita's team has issued notices to train operators and rail traffic controllers in the control center, which direct focus on power-related warnings on the train control displays. So if there is an incident, we have a heightened response and we're on it immediately. Additional managerial and mechanical staff are deployed in the field to ensure any report of a loss of power to a train or notification of an incident is responded to early and rapidly. And additionally, the training team is developing power and propulsion fault awareness training for train operators. So we're absolutely certain that they can recognize these indicators early. And this refresher training will reiterate to train operators fault characteristics of the rail cars. So that concludes my update on that incident. And Shanita and I are now able to take questions.
Thank you very much, Jamie and Shanita. Very informative presentations. I have one question, and then I'll turn the floor over to committee members and then to board members with comments or questions. So on the Eastern Market smoke incident, you talked about the 35 collector shoe assemblies and the fractures associated with them. Can you help me understand the risks associated with those fractures? I know how we responded, but what are the risks associated with those fractures?
Thank you, Chair Drummer. So the latest, the numbers, because we've been working on this since you probably received the last brief. So the numbers are now at 48, and that's for the whole in-service fleet. That was the update I just provided. It really depends, the fractures. So they can be superficial in nature. The material used is designed to have some flexibility and tolerance. But the way we respond to something like that is we're going to be very cautious and conservative and replace that collector shoe assembly. The risk associated with that is, worst case scenario is that those stress fractures may become more serious and the collector shoe assembly might be dislodged, causing an arcing insulator as we experienced, or they may run in service for many months with no problem at all. So what we have to do is to get on top of the issue, know exactly where the issues are, and then we can address them accordingly so that risk is immediately mitigated. We want cars in service without any fractures at all.
Thank you. So we're erring on the side of replacement rather than continue to operate. Thank you very much. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you. Jamie, still on this topic, are all the shoe assemblies the same for all the series cars? Or are there subtle differences?
No,
2, 3, 6 or
they're
something?
not exactly the same. So the inspection processes that have been designed, these enhanced inspections that I spoke about, there's one for the 7000 and then there are 2 more for the legacy, because we have to direct the mechanics exactly where the engineers want them to look, because there is a nuance to how they're structured in the material and the actual makeup of the collector shoe assembly.
Thank you. Shanita, and I have a question on the training and recertification issue. You know, this, I did say when I first heard this, it concerned me a little bit. So you highlighted what the operators have to go through, but what about the people responsible for the program? Are they have to go through retraining in a sense of, these are our procedures, here's what you have to do, here's what is expected? Tell us a little bit about that piece of the puzzle, if you
Okay.
will.
The answer to that is yes. The division managers and the training team, we all met, kind of went over the form, took feedback back from them about what they were seeing, and that's when the adjustment to the training board began. Also, through the process that Safety and Readiness is doing, kind of looking at the entire program and the standard, rewriting that and revising it to ensure that the standard is where it needs to be, and there will be training aligned with that also, not only in the training department, but also for the field personnel who is administering that, on how they look at it, what they're checking to make sure that the certification is in order. There are also internal audits that are happening with that team too, to make sure that they are doing a correct verification process as they look and make sure who is certified prior to returning them to duty.
And knowing you and your leadership, I'm assuming you reasserted to them the importance of this issue, and I hope that they understand that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, and in terms of the June 30th alignment, the deadline, if you will, or expectations, you know, it's been a while since we had the other incidences occur. Are we confident we're going to have a total realignment by the 30th now after 2 years? I mean, it seems like it's taken a while.
Yes, we are confident. New managers have been hired. There are other new team members are onboarding now. And so that move will be happening and in place by June 30th.
And I'm the other half of that move.
Yeah.
So double assurance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to go backwards through because we were like talking about the shoe, but now I'll go forwards through the slides because Paul just walked us all the way back. Okay, so can you tell me what the process was that discovered the uncertified operators? I feel like that was missing from the narrative. Like there's like this kind of gaping hole in the story as I'm hearing it that's like, like, how did we even find out that there was a problem?
So the team actually conducts internal audits all the time on it and trying to identify where we have gaps and mitigate those gaps. So there was some conversation going on with the WMSC, as it happens all the time as we've been going through the revamping of the certification process. They did tell us that they were looking, they had some concerns around just the whole entire program. So we began to do another internal audit on ourselves, right? And did a deeper dive to see if we had any outliers there. And that's when we found the 3 operators and the glitch in the return to duty process.
They were right to be concerned.
They were right to be concerned.
And I concur with Mr. Smedberg that, like, I mean, the explanation for what happened, I think, is, to me, it feels a little overwrought, and it's a little more like, just drop the hammer. Like, you're the boss. I'm sure you're taking care of it.
Yes, absolutely. We were actually working together as a team across the authority to make this happen and to move the project over and to move the actual certification program over to Jamie and Teresa and their team. And so that during this process, as we've been going through the entire recertification and certification program, there have been a lot of changes, positive changes, and we continue to move in a direction to get it to where it is. And also looking at the industry as a whole on what they're doing. Our program is pretty robust, and that training is longer than what anybody else is currently doing. So there will be hard looks at that, hard looks at the standards on how we score and what is considered passing and failing, and how employees are returned to duty in the process to make sure we don't have that glitch again. So yes, by June 30th, it will be, Jamie will be taking over.
Thank you. Okay, my next question is about the red signal overruns. I'm not, like, I get the point and name best practice. I feel like I've had a nurse do that to me. Like, that, it makes sense. Like, I think it's good, but should we be investing in, like, a lot of training around pointing and naming and, like, doing this differently when the real answer is ATO?
So because ATO isn't here yet, we're trying to figure out how do we mitigate that right now? And what does that look like? The training is not a long, extensive training. It's almost complete. It's a CBT actually, where you would come in. We will not only use it for red signals, but we're looking to use it for doors also, right? And so there are other indications on the railroad where we want to bring the operator to bring their attention to and to be mindful of how they're operating. So we will use it for red signals, but we're also using it for speed commands, right? And so you're looking at your speed commands to make sure you have those correct commands prior to moving your train. And the red signal portion is just one element of that.
Okay, and that makes sense. I'm not disputing that. It seems like ATO is taking a long time, and I am concerned because I have heard so many times that it is the safest way to operate, and this is an example of that. And this is also an example of, like, extra training and operational burden that is being created because we're not an ATO.
Board member, maybe I'll make a quick comment on there because I think both Jamie and Shanita would concur with your comment. So we are laser focused on running the safest system possible. We brought a peer review in well over a year ago.
I remember it.
You've all heard from experts. ATO is a much safer way to operate Metro Rail than under manual operation. That is not debatable by any safety expert in the world. That's just fact. Engineering solutions are safer than human interface solutions, period. I think, there's a general feeling in the organization that it's probably taking a little longer than we expected. With that said, we have to get it right. We have auto doors working on the red line. We're working with WMSC now to wrap up any remaining questions they have to basically cut and paste from the red line and put the auto doors on all the other lines. We're also working through what we brought to the board last time, which is going back to normal engineering speed, which was something this organization has had an issue with for 20 years. So we're kind of rectifying that issue. And then there's this overall training piece. So we definitely want to be on ATO. I want to make that crystal clear to this board. We believe it's a much safer operation. Safety department believes that. The infrastructure department believes that. Transportation department believes that. And every expert that we've talked to in the industry believes that. So we are focused on that. It's also going to make our fleet operate better. We believe we'll be more cost efficient. We are going to use less energy, so it's better for the environment. It's much better for the customer experience. There's a lot of benefits, but the number one benefit is safety. We will not have signal red overruns with ATO. It's just any one that we've had since I've been here, we will not have those.
Right.
Okay. So with that said, we're going to continue to work with our WMSC partners. We're hoping to get scheduled soon a demonstration test. We think that test will be a big box that we can all work and say there's an acknowledgement of the system and the operations of the system, and that will accelerate the program moving forward. So again, this isn't to say they're doing a bad job or good job. We are working every day with them, and I believe they're working in earnest collaboration to help move this thing forward. But I think, the more we all concentrate on getting to the safest operation, all of us, and a holistic approach will be helpful. So that's what we were really, really focused on doing. And long term, we are going to need, so one of the things Brian and I actually talked about when we got here is, a lot of people call it point and call, but other people call it the pointing method. So very well known in Japan and others is we are going to be in manual operation parts of the day or parts of the year, even when we get back to ATO.
Oh, so might as well do the pointing thing.
Yeah. So belt and suspenders, the old, like if you will, checks and balance, all those kind of things.
No, that's cute. Okay.
Yeah. But the idea is like if we run, say, July 4th at Smithsonian, we are not going to run trains in automatic train operation because we just have too many people on the platforms. We'll want those trains coming in at snail's pace because there's just too many human beings. If we have bad weather, like icing conditions or things of that nature, we would turn off ATO and have the manual operation. There might be times when we have single tracking that we have to go into manual operation for a maintenance issue or some other thing. So, we don't know the full balance of that yet, but there will periods where we're manual. And one of the things I think we want to, and rightfully the WMSC wants us to demonstrate is how we're going to ensure retention of technical capacity of training for someone that can do manual operation when they may run in auto for a long time. And that's a big thing that we're concentrating on too, because we can't have someone out there in auto and then they have to do manual and they kind of forgot and don't know how to do it. So these deeper skill levels, and hence this kind of movement into a technical proficiency training that Teresa is really concentrating on, will make sure, again, belt and suspenders approach to the organization.
Okay, that was really helpful because I think it's something weird that happens in transportation as a sector is that like even when everyone agrees, sometimes the stuff doesn't happen and it can be discouraging. So like, but this helps me understand a little more like the nuance around like why this is taking so long and what getting it right means. So thank you. That's really helpful. Now I want to pivot to talking about the shoe. I think this transparency is awesome. And the way that like this just happened and we're already able to share with the public what we know so far and what we're still working on learning, it's great. And we should keep doing this. So I just want to commend this was just such a helpful presentation. Just seeing this photo, now I'm like, no wonder they call it a shoe. Just look at that. It's very shoe-like. There isn't a better name for that. So this thing's hanging on the bottom of the rail car. It makes sense that the most common way something like that would be damaged is by hitting something, right? Just like a shoe getting messed up because you like kick something with your foot. Is obviously not the board's job to like conduct a root cause investigation in order to find out what happened to this thing. But like, it just still feels to me like this explanation of the investigation moved on a little quickly from like the rail car could have hit something. Like walk the whole Silver Line. I mean, I'm sure that was a lot of work, but like, could it have hit something in the yard? Like, or somewhere else? Like, do we check everywhere the shoe could have kicked something?
No, absolutely. Those checks have been extremely extensive, but more importantly, to your point, we're not discounting anything at this point. and continuing moving lines of inquiry in the same direction.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going down some like rabbit hole of like 35 or 48 things had a crack in it. And so now I'm going to like pursue some kind of like systematic explanation when it still could be the shoe kicked something.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, board member, just to give clarity to that. So most of us have been around the rail business for a long time. The second I saw the video of this, and instantaneously, I think all of us that have been around, we're like, okay, we hit
The shoe hit something, right? Okay.
Okay,
Right.
so you have things like transition of third rail where you have no third rail. Those are transition periods.
Yeah.
That's what the TGV will go out and check all that kind of stuff. We're in pretty good alignment there. There could be something happened here that we're never going to find.
Yeah.
As an example, we could have an elevated structure where someone threw something on the right of way. Now it has to be big enough to do something, right? This isn't a Pepsi can.
Right.
And that could have burnt up or got hit and flew off the elevated structure,
Yeah.
and we're never going to know. We got video, we got power analysis. We all assumed, and so we take someone like Joe Fowler, you met Joe, he's our Senior Vice President of Track and Structures. Normally in our business, the vehicle people and the track people, like it's haha, which side? Joe, he's like, I hope we find something on my end because then we know exactly what happened. We have found nothing on the infrastructure at all to date, which would lead most of us to indicate, then we would start talking, do we have a manufacturing defect or some type of assembly issue? So we have a very small failure rate. And to board member Drummer's point, we are going to the conservative approach. It doesn't mean any of these fractures, we would have a safety issue today, but we're not making any risk. We're taking them, replacing them all. And then we're going to work with the OEM to really determine, the testing of the material itself, go into more analysis to see if there's a manufacturing issue, or again, is there something out there that got thrown at some point or something like that. So it's kind of an anomalous thing. Jamie, you can give any more on this, but I just want to give that context. Like normally these things happen, you kind of quickly go, okay, this thing is obvious, and we don't have any of that. So we're going extra conservative until we can get anything that's closer to a defined root cause. I mean, Jamie, feel free if you say it better than me.
No, what Mr. Clark said.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a lot of the silver line is outside.
And also my remember the silver line, the blue line share the same, like
Yeah.
we trains move between yards and different things. So, but we run to ground most all that data. So it's not like one, quite frankly, we believe the shoe part could have started at a place like Roslyn and Foggy Bottom. We saw some power spikes there on this train. That's an indicator. So, but there's nothing found. And even our most senior people walked that entire stretch of tunnel on foot, senior management, and nothing found. So it's very, at our point, we think this is a vehicle based at this point until we discover something else.
Okay. It's really impressive the amount of data that WMATA has on individual rail cars. It's a lot. Yeah. I don't know that I'd like fully wrapped my head around it before today, but it's impressive. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you. Just a couple of things that echo Tracy's point about transparency here. It's a positive that we are being so transparent about these issues, as concerning as some of them are. And it also stands out because we haven't had that many. There was a period of time when I joined the board that I felt like we were having these kind of discussions every single meeting. And that is not the case anymore. It's much more rare. That said, on the operator return to duty issue, is part of the operator training initially awareness of what their obligations are to be recertified if they have a period of time when there's a gap. And I'll preface that by saying I'm fully aware that it's ultimately on management to make sure that operators are certified. It certainly is, and that obviously was a failure in this case. But are we doing anything to try to ensure that the operators themselves know, like, hey, if I go out on leave, I need to be recertified? Because ideally, if there was a management failure to catch something like this, the operator themselves would step forward and say, hey, I can't drive this until I'm recertified.
Yes, actually, we are also looking to put some identification on their actual operator's ID, which would have the date of expiration. So not only will the operator know exactly when they are expired or looking or approaching expiration on certification, but anyone that is issuing work will also look at that ID and be able to see that the operator is not in compliance and not issue any work.
But if the operator hasn't technically expired, but they go out on leave, their certification would still be good for that time period. Could that lead to some confusion?
No, I don't think so. So if you're not technically expired and you're going to leave and you come back and you still are qualified under the certification program, you do not need to recertify. So you will only need to recertify if you're out for a period of time, and during that period of time, your qualification recertification date has expired. But if you're out 30 days and you're not due to expire for another 6 months, then you do not need to go back through the retraining recertification process.
So how long can you be out without being recertified? Any period of time within the current certification period
That's
for that operator?
That's correct. Within that 2 years.
It-
But
is
you
that
need
the best-
refresher. You still need refresher
Oh.
training, but you don't have to go through the recertification process.
Okay, refresher training then maybe is the question I should have been asking in terms of awareness then.
Yeah.
Is there, okay,
Yes.
okay, we're trying to make sure they know they need to be refreshed when they come back.
Yes, absolutely. They know that they need to be refreshed.
Yeah, and board member,
Okay.
just to clarify, all three operators who just didn't do the exam piece all went through extensive and completed their refresher training. So
Oh, okay.
to a thread I think
Okay.
you're pulling at, and this is what Brian, Teresa, and their teams are looking through is, we have a date certain on certification versus proficiency. And that's what the whole evaluation is going to look at, which is right now it's time certain. So that's why this gap happened. This isn't at all analogous to, before I got here 2 years ago, that was a deliberate decision not to certify. This year was a return to service with 3 people, and it just kind of this overlap of 2 years versus the training piece. That's why this is basically one of the last parts of the entire reorg, and the whole idea here is how do we move towards proficiency, training, and certification versus time standards, because that could not lead to the person being the fully compliant the way we want them versus just kind of more checking a box. So everyone is aligned by performance and proficiency training going forward.
Okay. And then last thing, this is more of a statement, maybe, although you feel free to comment. I am concerned that the WMSC does not share WMATA's urgency on ATO. We've had this discussion multiple times about the safety aspect of this, and I have sensed a great deal of urgency on WMATA's side, albeit with a desire to get it right. But there are, the pace and some of the things that have occurred have led me to be concerned that the MSC does not exactly share that level of urgency. And so I just want to say that, and I hope that they will come to that level of urgency, because we can eliminate red light issues and other things like that. So that's more of a me statement. You don't have to comment if you don't want to, but just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Chairman, Jamie, just a couple of quick questions on the Eastern Market collector shoe issues. On the shoe, how many shoes are there on each rail car?
Four shoes on each rail car, 4 assemblies.
So,
They
so
basically
there's
sit
two on each side. Is
in
that
the front and the back. Yeah.
And what happened here was that a failure on one produced an arcing to the other, to the second one on the same side.
Exactly. Because one failed, it puts more demand on other collector shoes in running the train. So that one then failed as a result of the first one failing.
Got it. Just second quick question. My recollection is that, well, let me back up into this way. The collector shoes, are they part of the train as manufactured by Kawasaki, or are they produced by a subcontractor?
They're produced by a subcontractor, but they're part of the overall contract with Kawasaki.
I guess what I'm getting at is that, did WMATA specify a particular subcontractor for the collector shoes, or was this a decision made by Kawasaki in selecting who would produce the collector shoes?
Jamie, I think
That's a
I
question.
think I'll jump in on this.
Yeah,
I think
that-
advice of legal general counsel will probably not discuss that publicly based on some ongoing things with Kawasaki on our fleet defect.
Okay. Let me ask a slightly different question. Are there multiple manufacturers of collector shoes?
Yes.
Okay. Final question is, my recollection is that at the time WMATA purchased and took delivery of the 7,000s from Kawasaki, there were other transit systems in the US who purchased similar Kawasaki train sets similar to the 7,000. Is my recollection correct?
I don't think, hearing from Paddy, I don't think I should discuss that one.
Okay. I'll ask the question differently. Have you reached out to any other transit properties, transit systems in the US regarding their experience with collector shoes?
That is definitely part of the process. No question. Because we're gathering data on our system, but also the engineers have contacts around the country. And that's definitely something that we are looking into.
And what's the results preliminarily? Is this a common problem with rail cars and collector shoes?
They're collector shoes by their very nature, in the fact that they stick out. They are at risk of damage. So collector shoe issues and damage is something that's well known to transit. But the specific nature of what we're experiencing, we haven't done all the full investigation to be able to answer your questions completely at this point.
Yeah, I think what I was getting at was, are there other reports of incidents of arcing of collector shoes that you've identified so far in other systems?
Not specifically related to this incident.
Yeah, I guess I'll bring the local just so we don't have a shoe issue, we have an assembly issue, and those are not the same things. So every day in America and all over the world, there will be arcing from shoes on every transit system that runs electric generated power. And every rail system will lose shoes from time to time. That's just a common thing in transit. That's not a safety issue. That's just literally engineering, and as Jamie says, sick of. We have a specific case regarding the red piece, the assembly itself, the cover box. And part of the investigation will be talking to other peers that also have similar or same type, because these are also built a certain way for us, for our vehicle, which is a little different than others, but neither here nor there. Same material, same type, whether it's blah, blah, blah agency or XYZ agency, and to see if there is some other common denominator connected to the material or the assembly type of unit. But I just want to separate, that's different than the shoe itself. That's the overall box assembly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Essentially, what you're saying is the shoe is the bottom part, the dark part,
That's correct.
and the whole assembly is called a collector shoe assembly.
Yeah, the assembly is like what's like Jamie described, the box in the middle, and then it's like a shield box around it. So the issue that we've come to discover is some fatigue cracking in what looks like the red-pink part of the assembly.
Right.
Not the paddle part, the paddle or shoe part. Yeah, it's a piece of steel that connects to the rail, and that, if we normally have an incident on the roadway that's an issue, shoes get knocked off. And then right away, we know what's going on. And that happens everywhere in the world, anywhere that there's rail system connected to power systems.
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to reframe my question is the part that does concern you, the orange vertical stripes there on the picture back of you, are those breakdowns been experienced by other U.S. transit properties based on your investigation so far?
So again, this only happened a couple days ago, so I guess board member, what the staff's trying to say here, that is part of the investigation, and we have no indication yet from any of our peers that we have a specific industry-wide issue or anything like that. So as this investigation unfolds, if that happens, quite frankly, one of those things would be great for us because then we could actually know exactly what happened. But there's no early indication of anything like that. And again, incredibly small failure rate. And another agency might have a higher tolerance for a fatigue crack and not remove from service. We decided we're not willing to take that. As Jamie said, we could have some of these fatigue cracks that we found and be out there for 2 more years and have no issue. But we just decided to replace them all. And now we're going to watch them at a higher rate just to make sure this can't happen.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about taking them out from service. What I'm concerned about is an incident, causing an arcing and smoke. Because that's basically what produces the dangerous situation for passengers on the train as well as in stations. So what I'm trying to get at is that something that you're going to investigate from other systems, whether they've had similar incidents resulting from the...
Yeah, that's stated with the staff. That is part of our investigation. That's just standard investigation stuff in transit. Yeah.
Thanks.
A separate board investigation into whether this is a rent thing.
I won't comment on that.
So in the interest of time, thank you.
Thank you.
And Shanita and Jamie, thank you for your transparency, for clarity, and for action planning. And at this
Thank
time,
you.
we'll transition to our next presentation on Metro Access.
It's Christian Blake. This is like meeting a celebrity.
Mr. Dwyer, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the board. I am Brian Dwyer, Chief Operations Officer with the Authority, as I think you all know, and it is my privilege to be introducing both today's presentation and our Vice President for Metro Access Services, Christian Blake. Christian is known internally and externally as a tireless advocate for our customers with disabilities. Our Metro Access paratransit service offers a transportation lifeline within the Washington metropolitan area, providing services to our customers with disabilities who cannot use standard Metro bus or Metro rail services for all of their trips. As the nation's 4th largest provider of paratransit services, Metro Access underscores this agency's commitment to inclusivity, accessibility, and independence for all of our customers. Metro Access has an excellent record of safe, reliable, and courteous service. You'll hear more about that in the presentation. We have an innovative service model providing flexibility and service options, which we feel today's customer demands. We remain dedicated to upholding the standard of excellence that customers have come to expect from this service. Thank you, sir. The Metro Access service model is aligned with our strategic plan, focusing on enhanced service reliability, customer satisfaction, and technological advancements. Current and future improvements each reflect our values of safety, fiscal responsibility, and innovation. General Manager Clark had direct experience in changing a paratransit contracting model while serving as the CEO at Cap Metro in Austin. Once here at the Authority, he challenged Christian and the team to improve a very good existing service model. Over the past year, staff from operations, procurement, planning and performance, budget, and legal have all collaborated on developing planned changes in our contracting model going forward. At this point, I'll turn it over to the famous Mr. Blake to discuss our current service and eligibility model, key performance indicators, technology advancements, and our future contracting model.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Look, glad to be here. Y'all set me up on this one, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll begin with some basics about Metro Access. Metro Access is a shared ride, fixed ride equivalent public transportation service. Customers must apply for eligibility. Our decisions are made within 21 days. Eligible customers book their trips with Metro Access no later than 4:30 p.m. the previous day. Customers pay a fare of twice the fastest fixed route equivalent fare with a cap of $4. Customers are provided door-to-door service. We use large vans, minivans, and sedans. And there are currently more than 36,000 individuals who are eligible to use Metro Access service. 6 years ago, yes, Metro Access was experiencing increasing expenses. There was a need to reduce expenses, but not in ways that would result in having the quality of service, namely on-time performance, suffer. A plan to offer customers more options through decentralization got underway. Our Abilities Ride program began with 2 taxi providers and is now up to 10 alternative services, handling more than 30% of daily trip demand. At the heart of this decentralization plan is the concept of maximizing the use of alternative services, but only to the extent that we still protect the safety net that is the ADA paratransit service. This change in approach to one of customer options and decentralization has proven to be effective. We lowered expenses by going from 185,000 revenue service hours per month on the dedicated service down to 135,000 revenue service hours per month. At the same time, Metro Access has had 51 consecutive months and counting of 90% or greater on-time performance. While also we have been preserving some of the most customer-friendly public service policies that you will find in any paratransit service in this nation. They include service hours in areas that extend beyond the ADA requirements. Less than half the trips are, in fact, daily shared rides, because we've listened to our customers in that. We attempt to schedule each customer's trip to their stated vehicle preference. And over 30% of daily trips are at a discounted fare for the customers. Metro Access performance has also been strong in safety. Over the past year, we've had a very strong safety year with only 1 month not meeting our industry benchmark for safety incidents, and we met the industry benchmark in 9 out of 12 months of the previous 12 months, I mentioned earlier our streak of 90% or greater on-time performance. While that streak is nice, we're always striving to improve our overall on-time performance. Our goal this year is 93%. And while we've been a bit short of that, we are making some scheduling adjustments with the hope of a surge in the last quarter of this fiscal year and moving into the next year. Metro Access continues to strive to increase customer satisfaction as measured by our customer satisfaction surveys. We found strong correlation between the satisfaction rate and the percentage of trips that are shared rides. However, we cannot abandon shared rides, so we aim to increase customer satisfaction through higher and ever-increasing on-time performance. We'll now turn to some technology enhancement that we have and will continue to help us improve our service. Safety, of course, is our primary responsibility with Metro Access. To ensure the service has remained as safe as possible, Metro Access has embraced technology to support our safety performance. The technology initiatives began with adding driver attention warning DAW devices to each vehicle. DAW provides warnings to operators whenever they display fatigue, inattention, or distraction. There are also interior recording cameras in each vehicle, and we're also using technology that assists in collision avoidance and lane keeping. We're really excited about our newest technology feature, which is called Alert Meter. Previously, we instituted readiness for work interviews for each operator before they went into service every day. While this has been effective, they were time-consuming. Alert Meter instead brings more fun, consistency, and a lot more data feedback to the process. Each operator must play the Alert Meter game prior to going into service. If any operator scores below their respective baseline twice, they are then subject to the readiness for work interview before being allowed to be placed into service. Metro Access has also instituted some initiatives in customer-facing technologies. The Find My Ride web application allows customers to use their cell phones, mobile devices, or computers to track the progress of their Metro Access trip. The web application also can be utilized to provide customers with service updates such as emergencies, changes, holidays, and other information that we share with our customers. Metro Access customers can now also send text messages to get updates on the status of their trips, to cancel the trips, and to request adjustments to their trips. And Metro Access has recently introduced Tim, our digital assistant, that intelligently books one-way or round trips and provides tremendous support for all incoming calls, thus reducing extended wait times and improving the customer experience. So what's next for Metro Access? While we're proud of and seeing the success of the current business model and has proven to be successful, with Metro Access, with our leadership of Mr. Clark, Mr. Dwyer, and just the team's overall goal, we're striving to achieve what we consider to be unquestioned industry excellence standards. We intend to be recognized without subjectivity, the best in the industry. And this begins, of course, with safety and sound fiscal management, but we're also aiming to achieve a consistent level of 97% on-time performance in a manner that is sustainable. With such lofty aspirational goals in mind, we had to take the position that we don't know everything. Success is not indicative of future results. So Metro Access has been making adjustments to its business model by listening to others and getting ideas. First and foremost, who do we listen to? Our customers. And we have some here today, of course, and we have always listened to our customers, especially when adding new companies to the Abilities Ride program and bringing other features and services and vehicles to the fleet. Secondly, we've incorporated ideas developed internally from staff. In addition, there was a Metro Access business model study completed with recommendations from a team of Jacobs Consultants, and we also conducted an industry outreach to hear directly from vendors their thoughts on this Metro Access business model, which is wholly unique to this industry. And also, we wanted to learn from them best practices employed elsewhere. So moving forward, the Operations Control Center, some of the things that are being done moving forward. The Operations Control Center, which is the nerve center of the Metro Access operations, its roles and duties will not change much, but we will be emphasizing greater improvements in same-day trip movement. And that has to be an area of focus, and we believe will get us to higher on-time performance. The new service model for service delivery, those are the vans and sedans you see branded with Metro Access logo on them. We're now going from 4 paratransit providers currently, and we're going to go to either 1, perhaps 2. But they'll be divided, as you see on the screen, into 2 zones, with the Washington, D.C. being the hub of this sort of hub and spoke system that has been successful in the airline industry and others. But it will reduce our number of contractors from the current 4 down to 2 or maybe even 1. The zones are divided north of Central Avenue in Prince George's County and all of Montgomery County, and south of Central Avenue in Prince George's County and all of Virginia, with, again, DC operating as the hub. We're going to be moving our quality assurance in-house over time. And the first step to that is a new performance assessment support contractor that will be replacing the quality assurance contractor. They will support management in making decisions and engage in strategic planning to ensure the ongoing quality of Metro Access service. But the quality assurance duties and responsibilities are coming in-house as a step-by-step process over time. And then we are adding we're reintroducing non-dedicated service to the Metro Access service. We've had it in the past, haven't used it in the past 6 years, but this is going to be a new type of non-dedicated service where the providers they're providing ADA paratransit service. That's the key here. These are ADA paratransit trips, but they'll be using their own vehicles and their own scheduling and dispatch software. And they'll be divided into zones throughout the region, 6 zones throughout the region. Trips will be no more than 10 miles. There'll be short shuttle-like trips that we've experienced and we have heard from the customers enjoy on Abilities Ride. So we're trying to bring some of that positive experience to our ADA rated trips as well. And this all then brings us back to the Abilities Ride program. Over the past 5 years, nearly 1 million trips that otherwise would have been in a Metro Access vehicle at the higher ADA paratransit cost have been provided through alternative services, creating significant levels of customer satisfaction and sustainable and cost savings for the authority in the region. Again, under our leadership, we're being challenged to continue the success, but take it to an even higher level. And we're going to do so through improved administrative oversight of the program and functionality, as well as bringing in more providers to the Abilities Ride program, thus challenging our customers to focus and enhance and utilize their abilities to be independent as opposed to their disabilities to tether to the Metro Access service. Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you all very much, Brian and Christian. We really appreciate this update with Metro with regard to visibility, and then secondly, future planning. And it looks like we're being very creative in our approach. So I have one question. I have two others, but I'll keep those till the end. One question, and then I'll turn it over to committee members for their comments and questions. The alert meter. I'm really excited about that. My question to you is, does it have applications in rail and bus arenas?
We believe it does, and what we've done is been working with under our leadership in the operations, and I know they're considering certain things. They're looking at our experience with it, but I believe the opportunity is certainly there, yes.
Yeah, Christian, thank you. Chair, I'll add to that. We've had the bus leadership and rail leadership, Shanita, Leroy, some of their teams, and actually some of Teresa's leadership team as well, to go out to some of the vendors in the field to view this. So we have been talking to procurement about the best way that we could kind of introduce a pilot. So it is ongoing. I don't have a great update for you, but it's ongoing discussion. I think the staff is very supportive of it because, you know, this is something that not just paratransit, but industry generally struggles with. And, you know, it's an innovative solution to something that's, I think, dogged the industry for a long time. So we can certainly provide you a better update as time goes on.
Thank you.
Of course.
Dr. Love?
I also wanted to ask about the alert meter. I have a couple other questions, but let's start here. Mr. Blake, have you played the game?
I did. During the initial process, they allowed staff to take part, and I utilized it, yes.
Is it fun?
It is fun. It is a game. It is fun. But in my view, as much fun as you're having, one thing I did see, it's very accurate. I could tell the days when I wasn't 100%, and it was pretty, even though I thought I could play the game, it was pretty good at accurately detecting that I needed a little more rest.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like I mean, of course it's innovative, but it's also kind of cool.
It's utilized in many industries. Terry Ann Williams Hall, our director of Metro Access, went out and reached out to the company. And I believe we're the first public transit agency to try this. Don't quote me on that. I believe we are, but it is used in other industries that are highly safety sensitive.
Very cool. I keep us posted. I mean, I want to hear about this again.
Certainly will, Director.
My other question is about the second to last slide, which it shows, I'm like already forgetting the jargon for this. They're ADA compliant rides, but they're out of house, non-dedicated service.
Correct.
When was the last time we had this?
5 years, 6 years ago, before we really went all in on Abilities Ride. So what you may have remembered, there were times when instead of a Metro Access van coming, because all we had is vans at the time, there might have been a taxi cab coming. And those taxi trips were actually ADA paratransit trips. They counted towards our OTP. If there was an injury, they were all part of that. They were door-to-door service. only certain drivers of the taxi companies could provide those trips. We went away from that because, again, the customers voted in the sense with their feet and their abilities to try other services. But we wanted to do is bring the positive feedback and experiences of the customers who are utilizing these private services to our ADA rated trips as well.
Right. And I appreciate your emphasis on listening to the customer. And this is why everyone, your name is invoked with so much affection. and I can see why. But I think it's also really important to highlight how much more cost effective Abilities Ride is, right? Like, of course we should listen to the customer, but we also have to listen to that cash register sound that I am hearing that is haunting my dreams. And what do we know about the cost effectiveness of our previous experience with non-dedicated service?
Well, in the previous model, the challenge was you end up spending just as much, if not more, especially when you're replacing very long trips on a taxi cab. Because at the end of the day, you're still sending them miles away, plus just the overhead that they were charging. By keeping these trips small, zone-like trips, it's keeping the cost of the operator lower. We're guaranteeing them a level of business. So while it's not a tremendous difference in cost, these trips are going to be satisfying and at a lower cost for the customer, for the agency. And again, the more they can produce with their own software and therefore not having to always call the Metro Access call center, and they could be more independent and do more things somewhat creatively. If their costs come down, we can feed them more trips and that again keep our overall costs down. This is a key part of our FY25 budget, make no mistake about it.
And I think that performance managing in that way is really smart. That's a good story as well as a good practice. Could we go to the next slide? So what we see here is that FY23 was a special year, but in the long term, I mean, what I would like to see is this share of Abilities Ride more consistent and growing. What do we need to do to get there? Are we doing it?
We're doing it, yes. So the first thing we have to do is continue to encourage other providers to join the program.
Okay.
Because right now, if we wanted to, we could send out even more trips to Abilities Ride.
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is these private companies, they have a capacity as well.
Right, they're short drivers. Everybody knows it.
And a cab company will tell you, oh, send us everything. But if I send too many trips, and then Ms. Rush or Mr. Sheehan's trip is now extremely late, they're going to get so frustrated with those services, they're just going to say, leave all my trips on Metro Access.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So we have to keep a balance as to how much do we send to these providers. So instead of overwhelming any one, the key is to grow the ship, if you will, and spread the wealth. And the other day I was at a meeting in Virginia, and there's a volunteer transportation company. They use volunteers to transport people with disabilities. I said, sure, you sound just like a great partner for the Abilities Ride program. Now, of course, I got to be careful with my colleagues in procurement. There's rules on how we have to go about it. But I'm willing to help orchestrate as many providers who want to adhere to our commitments on accessibility, safety, vehicle, and reporting to join our program to give these customers more choice and options.
I mean, I can tell that it takes like a savvy and experienced manager in order to facilitate this kind of transition. So I appreciate that this isn't like flipping a switch or just issuing any one procurement. What do you feel like the timeline is in terms of like, are you thinking that like this is this is like incremental progress that we're going to be seeing over years? Or do you feel like we're maybe reaching a tipping point?
We're growing, and we just had our colleagues in procurement completed a successful solicitation, and we're going through the process of seeing if there will be new capacity added. I do believe between the Abilities Ride program and the non-dedicated, next fiscal year, our revenue, I mentioned the 135,000 revenue service hours we're down to this year. Next year, that number is going to 121. To me, that's kind of like a baseline. We can always look at other things moving forward and effectiveness. But I believe that from the way I'm seeing things in the planning, we'll probably be close to 50% of daily scheduled trips. People call in every day for a trip will be on a service other than a Metro Access branded vehicle moving in this fiscal year coming up.
That's outstanding.
We started with 5%, and we've grown to today 35% today. And on the weekends, we're nearly 40%. And that's with our current. So we definitely see growth opportunities, but we always want to protect the ADA paratransit safety net. So we always have to just keep certain balances. But no, it's growing. And you're going to see the results as it moves forward.
Okay, I can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Helfer?
Thanks. And Christian, thanks for your energy and passion and work. Just a couple things on the ADA. They're considered ADA rides. How are we monitoring and maintaining the integrity of the rules within the ADA system on those vehicles?
Right. So those vehicles, yes, on the non-dedicated, they will be part of our safety meetings, our safety protocols. They have to be subjected to the same level of scrutiny in terms of the discrete surveillance that our performance assessment support team is going to be doing. They'll be subjected to the mystery rides. The driver records are checked. They're going to be Metro Access trips, but in another company's vehicles, another company's software, and paid by the trip instead of the revenue service hour. So they're going to be Metro Access trips for all intents and purposes from a regulatory standpoint.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that. Medicaid just issued new guidance on cost sharing and ride sharing and coordination with ADA paratransit. Just wondered where we're at in that whole process. And I apologize, I was a little late. So if you covered that, we can catch up later.
We have studied this over the time, and because of the renewed interest that we're hearing, we're definitely looking at it. We have a staff member who's going to be working with COG and the AFA in terms of the discussion. I do want to say, just for full transparency, one of the things WMATA does have an advantage over many of our peers in the industry is that our paratransit is funded locally. When we begin to accept, we do have federal funds for the vehicles, and that's a great thing. We don't want to change that. As we begin to accept federal funds for some or all of our paratransit services, some of the flexibility that we've seen today doesn't necessarily go away, but it becomes a little more challenging to manage. As I've talked to peers who want to replicate in some form or fashion our Abilities Ride program, they found some challenges due to their federal funding mix. So what we're looking at now is again, we're hearing it, we're open to figuring out a way, and what we have to decide and determine is how can we take advantage of those opportunities of these trips that we are providing, but do so where they are clearly, and the dollars are clearly placed for those trips and not considered as part of the overall Metro Access service that then potentially creates some challenges.
Thanks. And just for Randy, since I mentioned the new Medicaid guidance, it also points to opportunities to pay for transit passes for people that can use the fixed route system. So there's a webinar this next week, and it's hot off the press, and so it's just hot. So I just, and just one more question, sorry. The capacity of the number of wheelchair vehicles available on those other systems, do you have a sense of the inventory?
For the non-dedicated, let's
Yeah.
start there. Non-dedicated, the requirement in this solicitation that every vehicle they bring has to be a wheelchair accessible vehicle.
Perfect. Thank
That
you.
was first and foremost.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the presentation. So we have a little bit of a unique situation in Northern Virginia because we have 3 jurisdictions that provide their own level of disability service. So kind of the first question is there any level of coordination that's going on? And that's Arlington, Alexandria, and Loudoun. Second is, I apologize to get in the weeds, but I am the finance chair. With the removal of the 3% cap, hopefully, there are changes to formula that are occurring, subsidy formula. We've heard quite a bit about what those are doing on the rail side. They also will have some impact on the access side. Some of the jurisdictions that are running their own service or supplemental service, I think, are interested in comparing costs more directly with WMATA in a sort of post 3% cap subsidy formula world. And so is that something you could work with them on to help them understand, what their costs are versus ours as they're sort of evaluating whether, how their service should be provided in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite a, board member, of course, would be anxious to provide any information we could to peer properties and, give them any innovation or information we can to support that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a great presentation. I think this is probably the most thorough presentation we've had on Metro Access since I've been on the board. Many of us have been on the board. That's why we're so excited to see you. So I have a number of questions here, some of which were already addressed, but let me start with Abilities Ride. I can see that people are choosing to enroll and use this service, which is phenomenal. I'm wondering though, so this Abilities Ride trips are not included in our performance tracking for
That is
Metro
correct.
Access, right?
That
Okay.
is correct.
Is there any way of knowing how on-time performance is other than whether people are still willing to use the service?
It's a challenge because I'll use Uber as an example. User trips today, both of our members today came on an Uber. They booked their trips through Metro Access. They won the lottery today, so their trips happen to be on Uber. But Uber didn't go to them. Let's say they booked their trip at 8 o'clock for Metro Access. When you get the link, you decide when you want the Uber to be there. So it's a different, there's really no on-time performance. You have the link. You booked it with Metro Access. Metro Access is clear. We have to pick you up between 8 and 8:30, on time or late, clear. But when you have the link, you decide, I want to go earlier. I want to go later. You click the link and then you get the estimated arrival time of the vehicle. So there's really no on time. And if your trip is on a taxi cab, you want to make that same choice. You don't receive a link per se, but you could call Yellow Cab and say, Yellow Cab, you have me down for 8 o'clock pickup, but I want to be picked up at 9:30 because I'm having fun with whatever this situation may be. So there's really no on-time performance there to measure, if you will. It's really, as you stated, the customers are going to vote with their decision-making if these alternatives are satisfying to them or not. And that's also, just to keep in mind, if I may add on that, you saw our customer satisfaction numbers hovering in that 80% goal area, and we want to get that higher. Make no mistake about it. Please also keep in mind, just like the on-time performances in there are thousands of trips and thousands of customers taking these alternatives every day, very satisfied. Those numbers are not included either.
Oh, they're not included.
They're
So the
not
customers
because, right.
you're asking specifically about their rating.
Metro
of
Access,
Metro Access.
that's correct.
Okay.
Director Klein, I'd just interject. We have been talking to Tom's team a great deal about kind of how we might measure this going forward. So I think when we have the new contractors on board, when we have a better idea, kind of projecting forward about Abilities Ride, very smart people here are going to assist us in trying to determine, hey, the better metrics we can get out of this. And I do think, Christian and his team have been very opinionated about, hey, do anything to measure, but just, don't don't interfere with the flexibility people are currently getting because they love it.
Right, well, that's the thing, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
the best metric is, are people using it? And
Yes.
yes, they are. Right, exactly. So, but another question I had about Abilities Ride, do the participants in the service, the companies, do they provide any special training to their, I guess, drivers to be able to participate in this program?
So there are commitments to training, safety, and we've provided a training because I didn't want to just rely on the company's training. So we developed a training and borrowed some from colleagues in the ADA industry. But is there a specific training that Yellow Cab has, that Action Taxi or an Uber? No. This is the general public available service that you and I will get. But I've always continued to go out and stress to the companies and the operators. I love just walk around the corner to McDonald's. I need to stop probably eating there. But I see taxi drivers over there, and I'm always talking to them, whether they're in the program or not, about the program, to look at it, but also the importance of serving customers with disabilities, because if they can do that better, there's a whole market for them. So I try to be a vice, if you will, in terms of going out and telling the operators about it. We've shared training with the companies, but there is no one standard, because we don't, again, from regulatory standpoint, we don't want to appear that we're making these programs Metro Access light. We don't want that image. We want to keep it what you and I experience and just work with them to improve it.
Okay, that sounds great. So switching to the non-dedicated service for a minute, I had a little trouble understanding that as well. That is considered part of those metrics will be included in Metro Access.
Safety, on-time performance, customer satisfaction,
And customers won't have a choice as to whether they ride on one of those vehicles versus a Metro Access vehicle, or will they?
Theoretically, no, but as I pointed out, one of the four things that make us the best, or at least the most customer-friendly paratransit service in the nation, is if a customer tells me they would prefer not to be on the non-dedicated provider, we will schedule around that.
Okay. This is good. There's just so much information here. This is great. With regard to the contracts that you're going to go out for the service providers, the two or the one, can you, not to get into any details of this procurement, because I don't want to do that, but what's sort of the state of the practice regarding performance-based contracts? Like how do we make sure that these contractors are going to be providing the service excellence that we're looking for?
So I'd just interject one thing that we may have had missing from the presentation, Director Klein. We worked with procurement to really get the vendors in themselves to have these discussions. So not only did we have the kind of standard RFP that went out and people could submit questions, we actually brought people out to New Carrollton, Christian and Suzette and their teams, and had direct discussions with these folks. So we had to your point, we had to be careful about it because we talked to Suzette, talked to some of Patty's team about how we can kind of balance getting information without kind of going over the line. And they were really fruitful discussions. And I would also say, Christian mentioned the consultant team we had, and we were very, very strategic about who we had on the consulting team. So we had some people who had worked at other agencies, but we also had people who had experience on the vendor side and really dug in to try to come up with contract provisions about liquidated damages and other things that, I think sometimes public entities think work for them, but it may work against them.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a great process. Just a couple more quick things. Is there a potential at some point of getting to same-day booking?
Well, speaking of that, now, of course, there's a budget implication to that, but the answer is yes. And the answer is we have to, because recently the FTA did send out a Dear Colleague type of letter saying, hey, paratransit, you guys need to start getting closer and closer to this. The non-dedicated is really also part of that. It's key to our FY25 budget and moving forward, but those short shuttle-like trips also can be a part of a plan for a long-term, on an everyday form of same-day service. And I will say we're ready. The fact of the matter is, if there's ever a challenge, and we don't have too many, but they can happen. If there's ever a challenge with our phone lines, for example, and we see it's getting close to 4:30, phones are having a problem, we'll send an announcement to the customers, we're taking same-day bookings tomorrow. And so we've done it to, again, as part of our customer care initiative, keep things moving forward and keep customers happy. But as part of a daily, same-day service, we're ready to go. We have the providers. And then maybe, let's say, I don't want to put a timer, we can do it tomorrow, but maybe FY26. Let's see how this budget cycle goes first.
Great, just as long as it's sort of envisioned at some point.
Yes, well, it's part of our
As
plan.
near term as it can be, and
Yes,
we'll figure that out. That's great. Last question. The region has a human services coordinated transportation plan, right? That I think COG puts together, Transportation
Right.
Planning Board maybe. I looked at that a few months ago when the most recent version came out, and was actually really surprised at how many providers of human services transportation there are. Like, there were like 100 in the
There's a
region. I
lot.
mean, it was
There's a
like,
lot.
wow, all these different agents, public agencies and private providers and non-private, everybody's got transportation services out there in some way, and shape and form. Can you just give a little flavor of how WMATA kind of coordinates with this landscape in the region?
Yeah. So yeah, and again, the ability to ride just gives us all that flexibility. So for example, in Montgomery County, there's CSS, and many of their clients otherwise would be on a Metro Access van back and forth each day. We partner with them through this program, $30 a trip. They're providing their own service, not on a Metro Access van. We oversee from afar. It's their individuals. They know their clients way better than we do. There's also Prince George's Ark, who we partner with in a similar way. And before the pandemic, there was a entity, the Ardmore, which we did similar daily, which is a school bus type of service. Pick them up from home, take a group of them to the facility, then take them all back home on very regular, short trips with the same driver, so that the customers are comfortable and it's a better experience, and it was much less cost than organizing several Metro Access vans, picking up one individual at a time. So no, we want to partner, and we've created some software that makes just adding partners very possible and easy to coordinate these trips. We just have to go through the process of the procurement process, but we're encouraging partnerships.
This is great. Thank you so much for all your work. on
Thank
this
you.
Presentation.
Thank you. This Metro Access update has been quite inspiring. Thank you and your teams for the work you do every single day. Oh, somebody else? Oh.
I just had easy question, and perhaps I missed it, so apologies, but what's the total number of unique users?
Currently, active users, if we will, is probably about 8,000 individuals who use the service on a regular basis. And of that 36,000, there's another whole group who are much more functional and use fixed route a lot more, because we have encouraged that, and that's a good thing. And then there's a group in the middle that uses it sparingly, just when they really need it. But on the day-to-day basis, there's about 8,000 people who are going to use it for dialysis, work, various things like that are consistent trips.
And I'm curious, because I'm just trying to get a sense of the total number of trips per year, how many, just getting a sense of the numbers of how many, is it like 80, the usual rule of thumb of these things is 80-20, or 20% of the users taking the majority of the trips?
Oh,
if I'm
right.
trying to
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
out-
That's our industry slogan, that a very small percentage, like 30% of customers use up 90% of the service. But again, we're trying to overcome that by giving them options. And sometimes we say to the customers, we're here for you, but there are other options. And if you want to pay the regular fare, you can ride Metro Rail for free, and then we also have alternatives. But yes, there are customers who are the regulars, and that's why it's so easy to plan and help the alternative providers provide good service, because we know where they're coming from, we know where they're going, we know their regular schedule, and the alternative providers can set up their systems and their operators and vehicles to give those customers great individualized service, as opposed to the shared ride public transit experience. And that helps move customers in terms of their own decisions to try other things.
Sure. And I don't know if I'm reading this chart correctly, but there was 2 million unique trips last year, and how many unique users is what I'm trying to understand.
1.8 last year, and that's about, I want to say about 80% of our pre-pandemic number, and the number is growing this year. But again, what we've done this year is increase the proportion of trips we're moving from dedicated to alternatives. But I don't know, did I answer your question?
I think so. I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how many people are using the service.
Oh, yeah, pre-pandemic, it was about, our peak came about 2.3 million.
But that's rides, but how many users, unique users?
Oh, unique users. Oh, okay. Let me get that for you. I have to get that for you.
Just again, out of curiosity, trying to get a sense of growing, not growing. And then the other thing that you mentioned that caught my ear was that it takes 21 days to get determined to be eligible. And
well, that's the max that the ADA allows. We turn them much quicker, but we always give, when we're in a presentation like that, yeah, that's the max the ADA would allow before you have to at least provide a customer presumptive eligibility until you get through the process. But that's not a challenge for us, but that's the timeline. Yeah, much quicker, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Santos.
Mind if I make one comment, Chair, as we wrap up here? I just wanted to, this presentation was good, but I think a lot of the board members that have a chance to interact with Christian just understand how lucky we are for him to have him part of this team and what he does every day. His empathy and just care for our customers is at the highest level I've ever seen in the industry. He's just amazing. And I want to give you an example. Last night, I got an email last night at 9:31 from a customer that we did not have a great trip with. I sent it out, so it's 9:30. I sent it to Brian and Christian at 9:39. So it took me 8 minutes to get the email over to them last night. At 9:49, Christian replied back. He said, I talked to the individual's mother, straightened out all the problems, gave her my personal cell. If she ever has an issue again, told her to call or text me anytime. That's the kind of person we have at Metro here running this program. And I just wanted to, recognize him for what he does every day. So.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you. Great presentation, Christian. Just a couple of questions. As you know, Metro Access is very important to Maryland. We're some of your better, and a lot of your customers, as well as we pay a lot of the freight. I think Maryland pays about 65, 70% of Metro Access rides, Metro Access costs. So a question for you. Of the 36,000 individuals eligible for Metro Access, do you have the numbers, break that down by jurisdiction? How many of those people are in Maryland? How many are in the district? How many are in Virginia?
I do. I just actually typed it up. It'll come up. My phone is going down on me, but I can give that to you in a second. Yes, I just sent that out this morning.
That's right. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about the Metro Access service area. I don't know if staff can pull up slide 64 of 151. It's in the next presentation on KPI. Is that doable, guys? Just as a way to talk about the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you look for yes.
Okay, so there it is. All right. So as you see from the slide, the Metro Access service area doesn't include all of Prince George's County or all of Montgomery County on the Maryland side. I think I know the answer for that, but I think it's better if you explain it as to why the Metro Access service area does not cover all of the jurisdictions in the WMATA area.
Correct. Yes, sir. So the Metro Access service area, while larger than the ADA requirements at this time, I can give you a quick history on that, but paratransit, first and foremost, you have to be within 3/4 of a mile of available fixed route service. So if there's no Metro bus service or locally operated transit service in an area, theoretically, you will not have any paratransit service either. The current Metro Access map that you see is larger than the requirement because several years ago, in an effort to partner with our colleagues in bus who were looking at efficiency on some routes, we said we can manage it in a sustainable way if we freeze the Metro Access service area while allowing bus to make key decisions. Prior decisions on certain routes would be impacted because once you cut the bus route, you're cutting a whole lot of people off of paratransit, and then that would become the decision maker. We said, let's not that be the decision maker on efficiency on Metro Bus. We have a frozen service area. However, that could change, just to be clear. But yes, it's the 3/4 of a mile of fixed route service and a little larger if an agency chooses so.
So this is an area that's broader than the existing Metro Bus routes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
We said it at some point in the past and haven't readjusted it to reflect any changes by Metro Bus
That is
in the
correct.
intervening period. Okay, so what do you do when you get someone applying who's qualified in terms of disability, but is outside of the service area? How do you handle that, and what do you tell them?
So we inform them that they are out, that their home address in this case would be outside the service area. We have a team within the call center that can work with them to help identify the nearest transfer point where they would have to be transported or somehow get to that location, and then Metro Access would serve them from that location to their destination.
So if their address is beyond the service area, I think what I heard you say is that if they can get to a point within the service area, then they can be found eligible and call up for a ride?
So let's, just for clarification, eligibility is not determined based on residency. Your eligibility is solely determined on your ability to use the fixed route service. Your residency, however, can determine whether or not a Metro Access vehicle or even alternative vehicle can come to your home. But we will serve you as long as you're eligible for Metro Access and you're within the Metro Access service area.
So you have to be just physically in the Metro Access service to be picked up?
That is correct.
You don't have to live in the Metro Access service area?
That is correct.
Got it. Okay, next question. On the abilities ride versus the cost of Metro Access, you had some different numbers in your, I guess it was in two different places. You've got the ability ride cost is about $28 per ride with some change. And then I had thought that the number I had picked up somewhere was Metro Access, the branded service is about $64 and some change, but you had had about $85 on one of your.
Yeah. So I'll take responsibility for that, but let me explain what I'm trying to do in responding to the industry has always kind of operated on a comparison of cost per trip. So we'll look at our cost per trip, New York's cost per trip, and others. And when Metro Access was providing 90 to 95% of the daily demand, that's a fair and equal apples to apples comparison. Now, what we're actually doing, our Metro Access vans and sedans, we're paying them as much to be there as a safety net as we're actually paying them to transport a customer. So you're not looking at, we're trying to figure out a way to help the industry, the board, my boss and others, look at this, that the real cost, the money that's going out the door is that weighted average of $64.23 or change that we're paying the service delivery providers on an hourly basis. And that's why it's key difference between the non-dedicated. They're paid by trip. The Metro Access branded vehicles are paid by the hour because they're the safety net for the customers in case Uber doesn't want to run, in case Yellow Cab doesn't want to run, or whatever the case may be. So that was I would say a mishap in the presentation. Got to work on it. We're trying to address what the industry is used to, and it was a direct request of the cost per trip comparison. But as we move forward with decentralization, it's really about the hourly pay that we're going to charge to have a safety net as opposed to the direct trip cost. Because if I'm taking 2,000 trips off of Metro Access every day, then obviously the cost per trip is going to go up, but it gives doesn't give a full and accurate measure of the important and critical work having those vans and sedans available really do for our customers in this region.
Okay, so whether it's the $85 or the $64,
yes,
it's a big difference between the Metro Access cost and the abilities ride cost.
Yes.
How much of that is the ownership cost of the vans? Is that included in the 64,000 per trip cost? Or does 64,000 just reflect the driver's salary and
Yeah,
the
that's
maintenance
the
and gas?
operators, yes, because the vans and sedans are capital. It does reflect the gasoline price, so but yes, it's gasoline, overhead, operators, mechanics, all the operational aspects of getting a vehicle on the road and operating.
But it doesn't include any ownership costs?
No, not of the vehicles, no, sir.
Not of the vehicles? Okay, it's just an operating.
Operation.
We're making a comparison of apples and apples.
Correct.
In this case. Okay. And finally, just a question on the ADA non-dedicated. I know you've had different questions from Terry and Member Klein here, but it's still a little foggy in my mind. The basic vehicle is a vehicle that would hold more than one rider, more than one customer. Is that correct?
Yes. It will hold at least one wheelchair, and they're all going to have, because these are different companies, so they're going to have, some are going to have Toyota Sienna, some will have Chryslers, some will have, what's the other one, the Honda Passport. So they'll have different vehicles, but they all will hold at least one wheelchair customer and at least one other passenger, but probably more.
So it would hire at least one wheelchair customer and multiple ambulatory customers.
That's right, correct.
Okay. And how does a person, you call the call center, okay? And then does the call center give you a choice of options and say, hey, you can either take the branded vehicle or we can send one of this new services to you of the dedicated service. Which do you prefer, or do you make the decision internally what they're going to
Right.
get?
So customer calls and books a Metro Access trip.
Right.
And what we've done again, because a lot of agencies shy away from it because of the challenge of scheduling to preferences, but we want to be different. We want to be the best. What's going to happen is customers are going to realize over time which services, because we're going to tell them, but they're going to realize which services are available. They like non-dedicated better than paratransit. They like, better than Metro Access. Some will like Metro Access better than the non-dedicated. They will tell us, it's fed into our system, and we do our very best. We don't guarantee, but we do our very best to accommodate the customer's preferences. So there'll be some customers who say, I'm going from here to here. Please put me on, I almost called a name. I don't want to call a name because the solicitation's still underway, but put me on non-dedicated A. And we try our best to do that.
And so what you're saying, a customer may prefer the dedicated service, even though they're going to be on a van with multiple people, rather than just doing the Uber.
That is correct.
Or Ability Rides, and you can handle that kind of.
Absolutely. We have a list of customers who, because there are plenty of, I talk about the thousands who are satisfied with Abilities Ride. There's another 2,000 or so I have on a list who don't want to be on a taxi or Uber or anything else because they need door-to-door service support. They like just the comfort and the experience with Metro Access. So there's, in the lottery system, if you will, their trips are excluded from being selected for one of those services. So we listen to our customers on all their preferences. On a preference like that, that's not a that's not a commitment. That's a guarantee, if you will. If you say you don't want to be on an alternative, you're not going to be on an alternative. If it's a preference that I want to be on the alternative and we can't guarantee everybody getting the alternative, that's where decisions are made through the process.
Sure. Finally, Christian, on Ability Ride, I think I read someplace where Lyft was joining the system. I don't know if I read that in the materials you provided or whether that was a press release of some kind. Is that true that Lyft is coming aboard as a participant in the Ability to Ride system for?
I really wanted to come here and I have to not answer that right now because there were some processes. We thought one thing and there's some processes taking place right now. So I don't want to. It's disappointing that I can't make the announcement.
The only shared ride service is Uber.
Correct. The only TNC, yes.
Thank you very much. I won't press it any further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you, Brian and Christian. You definitely have our attention. Again, thanks for the work you're doing, and we're going to move to the next presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks, board.
That's gonna, yeah, congratulations. Yes, and that's gonna follow. Yeah, I hope you're potential people.
Coming forward, we're preparing to receive our service excellence update.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Thank you. My name is Tom Webster, Chief Planning and Performance Officer. This morning, we will be sharing our Service Excellence Report for the first half of the fiscal year. Again, this report focuses on the Service Excellence Strategic Goal, one of the goals in Metro's Strategic Transformation Plan. This update compares performance against targets set for the year and discusses trends. We're pleased to be reporting again today some great results, as well as some opportunities and actions underway to continuously improve performance. I'm joined this morning by Jordan Holt, who leads our performance and benchmarking team. Jordan will now run through the highlights of the performance for the first half of the year.
Great, thanks, Tom. Okay, 3 things I want you to remember are, 1, that we are doing well in customer satisfaction, which is our goal level metric. We had our highest rail customer satisfaction at 88% in the last 10 years. We also saw 2 consecutive quarters of improvements in bus customer satisfaction and are approaching the target that we've set this year. And we had sustained Metro Access customer satisfaction, as you already saw in the prior presentation. This satisfaction is contributing to better ridership. So we've seen continue to see strong year-over-year ridership growth, up 21%. The first half of this fiscal year compared to where we were the first half of the last fiscal year. And we know that public safety and security is of paramount importance to our customers and our staff, and have seen improvements in our Part 1 crime rate, falling 14% from the spike earlier, the calendar year of 23 in January through December of 2023. The service excellence goal in our strategic plan has 28 key performance indicators aligned with it. You see the full spectrum here. I'll be covering a handful of them today, but have details about all of them in this presentation, the appendix, and the full report. As Tom mentioned, we compare performance against target. And what you see here is if it has a blue dot, that means we have met or done better than the target. An orange dot means that we have not quite met the target that we set out for the fiscal year. You also see check marks. Those are ones where we, for example, may not have met the target, but we've seen performance trending in the desired direction when we look at Q2 compared to Q1. All told, about 2/3 of the 28 KPIs are either meeting target or moving in the desired direction. Touching on ridership, I will say, I'll preview that you'll see kind of 2 themes emerge in some of these performance metrics. One is seasonal trends, and the second is some of the impact of the aggressive management actions we've been taking to control costs. For ridership, this is one where we see seasonal trends. As I already mentioned, we've seen strong year-over-year growth. You also see kind of a similar pattern emerging in the last 3 years, where we see ridership peak in the fall in October, and then decline slightly in November and December, really related to the holidays, the holiday period there. October did see our top 10 best ridership days were all in this fiscal year in Q1 or Q2, mostly Wednesdays between mid-September and mid-November, where we carried system-wide between 830 and 855,000 trips. We did have our top ridership day in November, where we almost approached that 1 million customer trip mark that we're striving for. We carried 954,000 trips on Metro and Metrobus on November 14th, which was coincided with First Amendment activities in the March for Israel. Wanted to focus on customer security. So as I mentioned, we've seen improvements in the crime rate and are currently meeting the target that we set for the fiscal year. You notice that crime did spike in Q3 of fiscal year 23, which was January through March. All of our jurisdictions saw similar spikes in crime. And for us, it was really driven by an increase in motor vehicle theft. And where we've seen improvements over the past 4 quarters, we've seen a big improvement, as you can see on the right-hand graph, in the rate of motor vehicle thefts. But we've also, when you look at the other categories presented there, have seen improvements in those areas as well. We are doing a lot to address crime, and I think the numbers are reflecting those efforts. Just yesterday, we actually launched a new safety campaign that is in addition to the increase in patrols and enforcement and the 8 crisis intervention specialists that we've already implemented. We are having more police officers actually ride trains and buses, and also more prominent signage throughout the system on buses and trains and a public toolkit. And that actually leads me to, I want to start on this one with the graph on the bottom left. This is public perception of crime and harassment aboard our buses and trains. So I think having a presence aboard our vehicles will help address the perceptions of crime, but did want to show that we have seen some improvements here over the last quarter already. Looking at the top on employee and customer assaults, this is an area where we aren't yet meeting our target, which was aggressively to reduce the rate by 20% compared to where we were in fiscal year 23. But we have seen good improvements looking from Q1 to Q2, both in decreases in customer assaults and employee assaults. Most of the assaults, as you can see in the graph, happen on our rail system for both customer and employees. On Metro Access, I won't spend a lot of time here as we just had a very in-depth presentation. Just did want to, customer satisfaction is our kind of key measure for service excellence. So just wanted to remind everyone that we've had pretty steady performance over the last 6 quarters in this area. On MetroBus, looking at customer satisfaction here, this is also one where we've seen 2 consecutive quarters of growth in customer satisfaction. We know kind of most recently when we look at the data that in part it was driven by improvements in satisfaction with cleanliness and safety from harassment and crime. We've had multiple kind of communications to the board about all the things that we are doing to improve our bus service. And wanted to call it on the cleanliness side. One thing we've been doing is making investments in vinyl seats, which stay cleaner longer, require less cleaning, and also I think appear cleaner to customers. On-time performance, this is another area where you can see kind of seasonality here. We saw strong on-time performance in the summer, followed by the seasonal drops in the fall, particularly due to an increased congestion on regional roads in the evening rush hour. That is where we see our lowest performance. We are actually meeting target in all other time periods of the day, but not in the PM peak between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. One thing we're doing is, whenever we can have bus priority lanes that can clear the way for our vehicles to be separated from congestion. And we're partnering with DC through the Clear Lanes program to make sure that these investments are effective. I think the fact that that through DC has issued over 42,000 tickets just in this short period shows how clogged our lanes are. So hopefully, it'll take a few months for us to see the full impact of this. But I think just that metric shows how big a challenge this has been. We're crunching the numbers, but need to wait a little while. Okay. Also, one thing that we did this starting in December was introduce 24/7 bus service. This is an area where by adding this service, introduced a few efficiencies to our scheduling system, which has been positive. We've also kind of looking at the early ridership data have seen that a typical week, this service has generated about 11,200 extra trips, both kind of during that new span of service, as well as by the more frequency kind of added in those time periods before and after. On service delivery for Metrobus, we are still above 98%, but have seen slight decreases in Q2. This is related in part to operator availability, which accounts for just over 40% of our missed service. We have been working closely to manage absenteeism, and when operators are absent, we use our extra board as well as predominantly our extra board. In some cases, we fill runs with overtime, and we've been working to aggressively manage our expenses there while still balancing the need to deliver as much service as possible. On Metrorail, this is, I'll repeat again, highest ever customer satisfaction, which is great and we know is driven by adding frequency all day. Most recently, I think what perhaps is reflected in this is when we added peak service in mid-September. We are missing very little of our scheduled rail service. We deliver about 1,550 trips a day and deliver 99% of them, which means we miss about 15. And when we miss 15, it's usually because of unplanned disruptions or track work that hasn't been in our schedule. I will say we've been working to make sure that all track work is reflected in our schedule, so that is an improvement that we've been making. I'll go on to the next slide. Customer on-time performance. So this is an area where while we've been adding frequency, as we do that, we actually adjust what it means to be on time. So it makes it, if we add frequency and shorten your travel time, then we expect your travel time to be faster, and we hold ourselves accountable to that level. So this is one where it's been relatively flat performance over the last months, hovering between kind of 88 and 90%. So we aren't meeting our target of 90% in this area. When we look at kind of how late customer trips are, so for those 13% of customers who had a trip that was late, most are less than 5 minutes late. So of that 13%, like 8% of total trips that are late by less than 5 minutes. Elevator and escalator availability. This is one where we've had very strong performance consistently over the last at least 12 months. But you can see the trends increasing for many months there. And this is one where it's been bolstered by and enabled by our multi-year capital investments in replacing and rehabbing our units. To put this in context for elevator availability, we have 320 elevators in our system. So 98.4% availability means that at any given time, 5 to 6 of those units are out of service. On escalator availability, we have 647 units. So at any given time, about 37 are out of service. What this can look like from a customer's perspective is I can use my own commute round trip. I encounter 14 escalators. I only need to use 8 of them. So there is a lot of redundancy in the system at the entrance. A 94.2% availability means that on any given day, I may see 1 escalator not working. So 1 out of 14 is about 94%. Closing, I wanted to touch on a measure in our strategic plan looking at the percentage of trips that use bicycles to connect to start or end their trip at our rail station. This is a measure where we use our customer our rail customer survey, which is conducted every 3 to 5 years. So you see kind of, it's not a quarterly measure, it's not an annual measure, but wanted to share kind of the data that we have. From 2016 to 2022, we saw big improvements. The share of riders almost doubled, and we've set an aggressive target to reach 3.5% by 2030. One way we've done this is allowed bicycles to be used on Metro at all times. And this includes any bicycle that can fit in our fare gates. So also bicycles used by persons with disabilities, such as hand cycles or tandem bicycles. We are also currently reevaluating our station and walk and bike sheds to identify opportunities to make it easier for people to access our stations using bicycles. And then we've been working to partner with Bike Share, as well as improve our facilities should customers want to leave their bikes at a station. And with that, I conclude the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for another enlightening presentation. I'll open the floor to committee members. Dr. Lowe.
What do we know about bike and ride performance?
We can give you some utilization statistics. I don't have them on hand, but we know how many people are using them.
It also generates revenue, right? Bike and ride's not free. I'd love to learn a little bit more.
Any others?
A question.
Ms. Santos.
On the slide about safety, I don't remember what the number was, I'm sorry, but what caught my attention is that there's a 60% goal for our customers to feel safe. And again, perhaps I didn't read that properly.
I'll get there in a second. Yeah. So our strategic plan has set a target of reaching 75% by 2028 with perceptions of safety. We've set an interim target. We're trying to move ourselves in that direction gradually. So that's what you see. That's why the target there is, I think, 59 or 60%. It represents kind of putting us on a glide path to get to that 75% by 2028. So we're aiming to improve every year.
And I'm guessing that there's data underneath this, but could you just clarify what do you know about what are the factors that cause customers to feel unsafe? And then the second question is, because just intuitively, anyone hearing 60%, that sounds awfully low. Could you just provide more context on how, totally agree with the glide path, but if you could just give more information.
Sure. So, we know perceptions of safety can be driven by how alone you feel, how many people are around you, how well lit stations and vehicles are. If you witness perhaps kind of crime being committed, or kind of witness other things like that. And so those are all areas that we've been working to address. We've been improving station lighting. We've been improving the police or security officer presence around stations, and now having them ride trains as well. So this is specifically focused on aboard trains and aboard buses. We've been also promoting kind of how to get in contact with our police force, and they're very responsive. I've reported things myself and get a response right away. So I think that also improves perceptions of safety.
I've noticed a huge increase in the signage about texting my MTPD. It's like, it's a lot more.
Yeah, I just have one other component. So obviously we have a massive amount of stuff going on this topic. And it's hard because there's reality and perception. And I think it's fair. In modern America right now with digital media and how everyone is really targeted with information, those things are not necessarily aligned. With that said, do we have issues? Of course, but we have a very, very safe system overall. We move hundreds of thousands of people a day with very little actual incident. But we want to further drive that down. So it's hard to actually ever put a goal, because whatever goal you put here, if it's not 100%, it is in theory unacceptable. So for us, this is more target of direction versus like goal and on-time performance. And I would look at it that way. Today, we actually put some media information out. We started a campaign not too long ago. We have a very large presence now riding trains of our special police officers, and the chief and Brian and their leadership has really brought that to bear. Obviously, a lot more on the bus side as well. We have over 30,000 cameras in the system, and we're really trying to push a lot more out there on that. Fare evasion is actually one of the things that we hear the most about related to this category. So not everyone relates fare evasion to feeling of public safety, but an overwhelming majority, and I mean super majority, actually connect that. And so what a lot of people feel is when people are jumping gates or doing that, that makes them feel uncomfortable from a more of a, a societal point of view that could lead to bad behavior, because and everyone that fare evades obviously doesn't commit crime, but almost universally, if you commit crime, you fare evade. So I want to give another public appreciation to Councilmember Pinto and the council members. They're moving the secure DC bill forward, and that we believe will help with our ID identification. That will further help in that. Tom's team is working heavily on fare gates, our fare boxes on the buses. So it's a multifaceted campaign. We've seen crime down. I think it's 13 or 14% already year over year. We believe that we're going to make a big dent in the remaining feeling of public safety or a reality of public safety this winter, spring into summer, because of all these efforts ramping at the same time. We're working on real-time video. There's just so many things we're working on at the same time. It's a complicated topic also, just in the general feeling of America right now as well. So any help the board members or others have on ideas to help get messaging out that we are working hard on this topic, and the reality is we're a very safe system would be, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Helfer?
Just a really quick question on the 41% of driver unavailability. Do you have any understanding of what the cause of that is? It just felt like a big number to me.
So it's of the 2% of trips we're missing, 40% are due to driver operator availability. And
Okay.
so that's just, any given day, people can call in absent. They have a sick child or that kind of thing. And so we try and manage that with an extra board.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
Just like to add there, I think, some amount of operator absence is expected and good. It's vacation leave or sick leave, that type of thing. I think an area of management focus here, working with our partners, is driving down those unexpected or unscheduled, unplanned absences, and that will help us manage both providing the service and costs ultimately.
Yeah, I just want to I'll further hit that point just a little bit, because one thing I'm really proud of the team is we have the least amount of drop trips on bus than like any of our peers in the country. That comes with a cost. And we've been we believe that we want to deliver every trip to our customers out there, and if you're a bus customer, not having a bus for 10 or 15 more minutes because it's crowded or it doesn't show is a big deal to your day. We are being faced with two pressure points at the same time. We have an enormous budget fiscal crisis, and from the stakeholders to me to Brian all the way down, I've been very clear. We have to manage budget and we have to drive overtime down. There's just no getting around it. We have to drive overtime down. The problem with that is we have people that are not showing up to work. And again, as Tom and Jordan mentioned, there's people that have legitimate reasons not to be at work, but we have too much right now, and especially on weekends and other periods of the day where we don't have enough people doing, we have too many people doing unplanned and unscheduled leave. And that's something we're working really closely with our labor partners on. We have to drive that down. So we are kind of in a rock and a hard place. If absenteeism doesn't go down, we have to be stuck with either dropping a trip or covering an overtime. And we made that decision that overtime has to go down, and we are going to drive more drop trips to our customers, and customer satisfaction will probably go down, and we're going to hear more complaints, but we can't have both. And those things contradict each other. And it was logical during the pandemic. Pandemic's been over for, depending your philosophy, for a short or a long time. We have to, make sure people are working appropriately. We believe we owe our employees a little bit more flexibility on time as well. So those are things we're thinking through as well. But for our customers out there, we do not want to drop any trips. But overtime is just the only way to fill those. So this is going to be something we're watching certainly by the week, if not day, and we'll keep informing the board because this will go into our Q3 financials, then obviously year end and how these two play together. So I just want to add that little context.
And I'll close this discussion with one question and one closing comment. The question, Jordan, you mentioned, well, first and foremost, the crime rate going down, that's huge. And we've been very impressed with what MTPD has done, partnering with safety and others to ensure that we moved in that direction. Jordan, you mentioned a new safety campaign launched yesterday.
Maybe I jumped the gun.
Okay.
I think Mr. Clark mentioned it.
Well, I know we're putting more messaging out. So in the last little period of time, we now have, I think it's probably 50 SPOs, 50 special police officers riding trains out on our system. So what they'll do is they'll check in with an operator. Actually, on my trip this morning, I saw it in action. They'll check in at the front of the train with an operator. There's announcements will be made to say there's a security special police officer on board if you need any assistance. That operator will record it, the special police will record it, and then they'll walk car by car through that train till they get to another part in the system. They'll switch, do it to another train, go in the opposite direction, and we have different teams out all doing that all day long. And then we have a little higher elevated security monitoring from video as well through our kind of new control center, both monitoring that and then gaps where those things are not happening. So we want people to not only be more aware that you can get a hold of transit police or other issues, but we also have a much higher push on visibility out in the system. So again, the chief, Brian, a lot of people are working really hard on this, and we think there's a lot of layers here. It's kind of like, you have a military background, sir. So, layers of defense, and we're trying to build more layers to just drive that, behavior that our customers don't want to see. And quite frankly, it's not fair for our employees to have, that 1% of bad behavior in the system. So we're doing everything we can to drive that out.
This is very impressive because the work that's been done so far was very effective and we saw outcomes. And now you're taking it yet to another level with additional innovation and creativity. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And Tom and Jordan, thank you for a great update. We'll move to our next presentation on wayfinding.
Okay, everyone. Hi, I'm Sarah Meyer, Chief Customer Experience Officer here at WMATA. Just want to introduce Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian Anderson. I'm the Director of Customer Technology and Innovation here.
And I know we're running a little over, so we're going to go through some of these slides a little bit more quickly than planned. But if you have any questions at the end, we'll be happy to answer them. So pleased to be back to update, thank you, the board after our September presentation on the exciting things that customer experience and engagement have been doing. The work aligns with the strategic plan focusing on service excellence and regional opportunity. So back in September, you may recall our extended discussion of the customer journey. These are the 7 steps that define the blueprint for the projects we are working on and thinking about. We are focused on first, these 2 items which have been identified as the most pressing. Navigate, responding to our customers getting lost. And wait, reducing anxiety by giving customers more real-time and accessible information on when a train or bus is coming. In September, we launched the wayfinding pilot at L'Enfant Plaza. And we've made a ton of progress, replacing all 200 signs in the station, incorporating customer-tested preferences, including exit labeling, neighborhood maps, cardinal directions, and more station headlists. I'm also proud to report that we've kept costs low using in-house forces and materials. I wanted to thank my fabulous WMATA colleagues who made and installed all of these signs. Customer feedback and research has been baked in from the very start, and we are still iterating and fixing on things that we need to optimize and fix. So, focusing first on our entrances. Our customers reported that Metro's hard to find. So we looked first at our pylons. We installed larger route markings. We added entrance and exit lettering, and we improved accessibility and elevator information. The stripes were really not as indicative as the larger route marking, so we're really happy we moved forward on that front. And I'm happy to report we no longer need to wonder which exit to take. We're now labeling each exit very prominently and can quickly identify them from hundreds of feet away, even as you're arriving into the station from the train. These photos were all deliberately taken from a lot of feet away so that you can see that the lettering is very prominent on top of our station booths.
And at this distance, the space dog and the space man look the same.
It's true. It's true.
Can't use it.
So when you plan a trip, and these, so also just wanted to mention, these entrance and exit lettering aren't just on our signs. We've incorporated them onto our open transit data feed, also known as GTFS. This will build confidence in our navigation experience even before stepping foot in Metro. So when you plan a trip, you know from the start which exit to take instead of aimlessly wandering around like I have spent way too many minutes doing. You can find this today in both Google Maps and Transit app. At the platform, we've worked really hard thinking about the right information mix for the two panel signs you see here. As a reminder, the upper level signs on these platforms are all installed on the vault walls. L'Enfant doesn't have columns, so this is our best workaround. We've incorporated improved elevator and transfer information, larger, more concise route information, and cardinal directions. On the lower level, we've reduced the numbers of directional arrows from 3 to 1, and we've also added in cardinal directions for better wayfinding. As you saw from our wall signage, our station headlists, we also call them SALs, have been significantly rethought and reworked for our pilot at L'Enfant Plaza. Getting these maps right is challenging as we're always trying to balance the level of comprehensiveness, clarity, and conciseness. You can see a typical SAL on this at Pentagon Station on the left and our newly remodeled diagram on the right at L'Enfant Plaza. We've added in points of interest, district boundaries, improved airport information, and we've also aligned the information to the line in a way that you can scan the information easier. So let's talk about maps, because our customers have talked to me personally and to my predecessors often about maps. There aren't enough of them, and they're not as easily seen as in other transit systems. So we've added a lot of maps into our pilot, both pre-entry and post-entry from the fare gates. We're also improving the design and functionality of the maps themselves. On the right is an example of a new style station area map, which we're calling Neighborhood Connections. On the Neighborhood Connection maps, there are clear designations for the 3 exits that we labeled A, B, and C, and also points of interest associated with each exit. So this is going to be really helpful for tourists, especially who are looking for major landmarks. We've also included regional transfer information like adding in VRE and Capital Bike Share as well. We're also working with the Southwest Business Improvement District, the SWBID, to ensure continuity of navigation at street level. Our ongoing customer research has revealed very strong initial feedback, and our customers have really noticed. I'll let you guys read this. It is posted to the web so we can get moving.
So what do the customers think? We put together a focus group of 3 segments: English speaking, limited English, Spanish only, and low vision wheelchair customers, to have them achieve 2 tasks: board a train to Navy Yard Ballpark and take the exit nearest to the Air and Space Museum. The majority of participants, overwhelmingly in all of these segments, boarded the correct train. But we noticed some participants had difficulty finding the correct exit. So how did we solve this? We improved some of our original signs from September by adding exit lettering and local attractions to the signs facing the customers when they exited the train. So check out the difference between the original photo in September and the one of the newer sign today on the lower level of the station. We believe this begins to solve the problem, but we'll keep researching and working with our partners in the rider and accessibility advisory committees to make informed decisions as we build toward a larger rollout. Next, let's move on to digital signage and passenger information. The headline is clear: more screens, more places. We know our new screens help customers with valuable real-time information, even as we continue to refine our messaging and design. Our main job is rolling out the new screens to more stops and more stations as fast as we can. So in 2023, we rolled out 140 new bus screens and 100 new rail screens. Some of the highlights are noted here of more entrance displays at Metro Center, Columbia Heights, and soon to be Farragut North, and cleaning up unpaid station areas by replacing old phone booths and other outdated infrastructure with modern digital screens at Union Station, LaFont Plaza, and Bethesda. All again done using our in-house teams. So let's check out our new passenger information designs. First, I want to highlight a clean, consistent design across every screen. Next, you'll notice DLY on the picture in the far left. It's that dreaded sight when you're in a rush. We're working together with our digital modernization team to rethink how our algorithms predict the trains to try to eliminate those dreaded 3 letters as much as possible. We've made small improvements today, like you see here, reducing the delay threshold from 2 minutes to 5 minutes, but we expect more updates to roll out throughout 2024. At LaFont Plaza and Metro Center, we debuted upper-level transfer information on the downstairs screens. This helps customers decide if they need to walk or pick up the pace to catch their train. And finally, 40% of our Metro Rail stations have real-time station ahead designs. This incorporates dynamically changing stop lists, next train arrival information, and wayfinding. So let's take a closer look. From the bottom up, in the white square, is the upper-level transfers card with live information. Above it is the dynamically changing stop list, right now showing a Blue Line train that's currently boarding at the platform. But when the train departs the station, we're ready to show the next 3 trains in real time with the upcoming stops of the orange line that's arriving in 2 minutes.
So we're going to switch gears to bus, yes, pun intended, and talk about Minnesota Avenue, where we're installing 10 new real-time screens in bus bays. We're also working through the rail to bus connections, trying to install screens where there's a lot of bus connections in the rail station so people know which bus is arriving first and how they can take advantage of maybe a route they hadn't considered before. For those not yet at the station, MetroBus for MetroPulse also recently launched to give you real-time arrival and performance information on our website at wamata.com. We also plan to launch new bus stop information design to make routes and arrivals stand out on the smaller screens, as well as clearer bus departure information inside the rail station. So what's next? For static wayfinding, our goal is to wrap up piloting signs in the third quarter of this year, approximately a year from when we started. Before we completely wrap it up, we'll be doing regular research intervals. And we also intend to extend some of our popular design elements like revised maps, pylon faces, and station entrance exit lettering to Metro Center and Gallery Place. We will also complete another full station pilot at Roslyn, which is a key transfer station for Virginia customers traveling between Arlington and Alexandria. And when all is said and done, we'll incorporate our findings into our Metro signage guidelines and present a full-scale rollout plan later this year. We're installing 270 new screens for dynamic real-time information, and we'll continue to make data improvements that add consistency across our systems, bringing elements like exit lettering to third-party travel planning apps and cleaning up our bus information database. Behind it all is a modern integrated technology system to begin a more centralized control of our screens and other communication channels like email, text, and web from a single place. Before the year is out, we're excited to beta test a new customer app, tying together all of these expansion efforts of real-time service and performance information, revised data, enhanced wayfinding, and push notifications into the palm of our customers' hands. So thank you for your time and happy to answer any of your questions.
So Sarah and Brian, thank you very much for this update. It's crystal clear that you've done some great work in planning, testing, and receiving rider feedback. And visualization is so important. And it's just real inspiring to watch this comprehensive clarity that you're laying out for us. At this time, rather than ask questions, I'm going to turn it over to any committee member. Okay.
I first just want to observe how cool it is that we're talking about this topic at all, because, WMATA in the past, like, there was no point bringing up even some of this like extremely obvious stuff because there was no in-house capability to do anything about it, no matter how much something needed to be done. So the existence of your team, much less the effectiveness of your team, is exciting. I just think it's a huge deal. And a sign of maturity in this organization that it's not just reactive running from crisis to crisis, that it's proactively thinking about how to do more with what we already have. I love it. The making Metro work better for people who don't speak English as their first language, I think this is a big wayfinding challenge. And I think it's even bigger for people who speak languages that don't use the Roman alphabet, or what is the name of this alphabet? Who speak character-based languages. And I think this is like this is a potential customer growth category for us if WMATA was like easier to use. Because those populations come from parts of the world where people don't drive and could potentially like use Metro for everything. And these are growing communities in the DC area, and also it's like an international tourism category. So I would challenge your team to think bigger than just Spanish as the dominant language that WMATA customers might also speak. Although I get that like our data tell us that that's what we need to look at right now. I just think there's room for growth in other categories. And I think you should repeat that experiment that you did, because did the changes that you made actually get right? There was a problem in the outcome for Spanish language speakers getting on the train in the right direction and then getting to the right exit. Do we know that the changes we made actually fixed it for that population? Got to run it again in order to find out. And so I think the sky's the limit here for how we can improve this. And this has been an issue with Metro Rail from day one. And the opportunity to finally do something low cost, in-house about this rules. I'm excited.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. So two things I wanted to mention. Number one, I think L'Enfant has this very unique, you mentioned it earlier. There are two exits, of which they both have these very large images of astronauts. So, you know, besides moving the art, which I don't think is prudent at this time, that's the major thing we need to overcome. Because when I see a picture of a giant astronaut near the Air and Space Museum, I would assume, right, that's the entrance for the Air and Space Museum. So we have to overcome that hurdle. I think that's really the main issue. When we went back to look at, we did have people keep their cameras on, their iPhones, when they went through this exercise. We believe that's really the item, the signage item that I know. So we're working through it, but we're also, they did really hammer home for me and for other members of my team that the biggest issue that people using other languages had was with our payment system. That was really the hardest challenge, and that's where you know, I've directed and are working with other members around the organization to try and get more translations up onto our fare vending machines as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but this actually reminds me of that earlier conversation about like red signal overruns and, you know, and ATO. Like the real answer here is open payments. And so, you know, thank you for all that you do.
Agreed.
but let's get that. Because yeah, I saw a couple Germans get on the bus the other day and try to pay, and it was painful. Thank you. Open payments is what's going to fix it.
Noted.
Right? It was painful. It was hard to watch too.
More to do.
Ms. Meyer, I was a guinea pig for your L'Enfant pilot program this morning, since I hadn't been down here for a couple months. And I found out as I got off the train and was getting up that I had two directions to go. One was to 7th and Maryland, and the other one was to, you know, 9th and D, which I knew was on the other side of the HUD building. But what I didn't see was a sign that said, you know, WMATA headquarters building, to get through the middle of, come up in the middle of L'Enfant Plaza. And since we do have a lot of people who come here, besides board members, and we want to encourage people to come here, I want to make a big recommendation that you put up a sign that will direct people to this building. Because I noticed there were signs that would take you to the Air and Space Museum, but nowhere was there a sign that said, hey, here's the WMATA headquarters building, which you might want to visit at some point. So, suggestion for you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. We do have Metro offices as one of the items, but it wasn't visible enough for you. I can get that, and we'll work.
It wasn't
we'll work hard.
visible, no, not
Okay.
at all.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to follow up on something Dr. Lowe mentioned, because I was thinking along the same lines, being somewhat data-based. There was information about the focus group, and the 100% took the right train. I think it was 80% took the right exit. Did we run something similar before making that? Do we have a baseline for comparison? Can you
So
remind
we
me?
have our customer satisfaction survey, which identified what the pain points were and how many people were sort of dissatisfied with navigation and wayfinding. So we have that as a baseline, but no, we did not do a specific focus group right before. That being said, I think hearing the anecdotal feedback of us and of our customers has been good, and want to, you know, keep moving forward. And it's something we can consider for other rollouts.
Yeah, I appreciate that reminder. It just gets back to the question that Tracy asked, which is how do we make sure that what we're doing is what's causing the positive
Noted.
outcome? But I understand the challenge of doing a focus group for every station exit throughout the whole system. So I appreciate that you're thinking about how to accomplish something a little more evidentiary based. My other question is a personal experience, like Mr. Goldman. I think a lot of the digital wayfinding improvements and passenger information display improvements have been fantastic. Actually, the new screens are so much easier to read for me anyway. But the one thing that I found more challenging is the little screens that only show 2 trains at once when they are deployed in a station like L'Enfant that has 5 lines coming in, 10 directions, because I actually found that to be more confusing than just a more static display that showed the next 3 or 4 trains, because it's cycle, if anyone hasn't seen them, they cycle through the next trains. And so you'll be looking at the first train that's coming in and then like the 4th train that's coming in, and then it cycles through. I'm just curious if you've had feedback on that and if you're still exploring where to deploy those types of screens.
So we have gotten a lot of feedback on that, and you're not alone. The size of the screen, honestly, was because of ceiling height. It's the lower level of the station, and more modern screens don't meet the necessary head and clearance space to hang. But, and so what we've tried to do with what we have in that 2-line screen is add numbers, sequential numbers like 1, 2, and 3. So the first train that's arriving next will always stay, and then it'll rotate between 2 and 3. But as we work towards a more modern system, we want to use more screens for some of this information. So we can work through the challenge of the 2-line, but also put more predictions, because with the real-time station ahead, you have 3 predictions just to your left or right, wherever you look. And so as we put screens in different places, we don't want to discretely think of each screen as one thing. And we want to try to use one technology system to put the right information in the right places.
Well, that's helpful. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
still thinking about it. And to be honest, I'm sure I would get used to it. It's just a little different from the way the information had been presented in the past, which all of this is. And most of it seems very positive, and I'm glad you're still working on making sure that the outcomes are going to be the best they could be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member questions or comments? Seeing none. Well, thank you all very much for this great presentation. Quite inspiring. With no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. After a 5-minute break, Mr. Smedberg will begin the Board of Directors meeting. Thank you.
Paul Smedberg, Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here today. Since we called roll at the earlier committee meeting, we'll move right ahead to the approval of the agenda. I'd like to consider the agenda approved as presented. Does anyone have any objections or comments on the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval, the board meeting and executive session from January 25th, 24. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Does anyone have any corrections, comments, or objections to those sets of minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Mr. Goldman, abstention?
No objection,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Oh, okay, no objection, okay. And now we'll move on to public comment and reports by our advisory boards. But first, we'll begin with our online comments. John and Jose.
Hello, my name is Judah Lesser. I live in Prince George's County, and I commute to Silver Spring. And I want to suggest that instead of the extremely disruptive Eastern Red Line shutdown this summer, you can instead allow MDOT MTA to demolish the southern half of the Silver Spring platform, which still leaves plenty of room for a 4-car train to stop the northern half of the Silver Spring platform. And then you can run 4-car trains from Glenmont to Rhode Island Avenue and turn them back at the Rhode Island Avenue yard, and then run 8-car trains from Shady Grove to Brooklyn and turn them back at the B&E connector. Thank you.
That's so specific.
Hi there, this is Ethan Abelman from DC. If you ride on the 70 at busy times like I often do, you know that it can be extremely slow. I know you know because both WMATA and DDOT have many plans in place to speed it up alongside all of the busiest lines in DC. But I'm nervous that there's a bottleneck that may stand in the way of better service on this line despite all of these great initiatives. It has to do with the vehicles themselves. Specifically, the articulated buses run on many of the region's busiest routes. The problem even affects the brand new electric buses you just put in service last year. To show you what I mean, I grabbed pictures of articulated buses from several major US transit agencies, including everything from New York and Boston and San Francisco to the local agency in Alexandria, Virginia. All of these agencies have solved the problem I'm talking about. I don't know how easy it is for you to see, so I'll highlight it for you. All of these agencies buy their articulated buses in a configuration with a third door in the middle, but WMATA's articulated buses have only 2 doors. To understand why WMATA should buy 3-door buses, in my opinion, I recommend hopping on a line using articulated buses at a peak time. You'll quickly see the problem. No matter how fast people board, it often takes a while for people in the middle of the bus to get past standees to reach the door and get off. I'm guessing a third door would cut at least a couple of minutes off of trips at busy times. Of course, you do lose a few seats with the third door, but that's a small price to pay for the massive efficiency you get. What's more, the 70 at least is a local route with a parallel express route, so most people are probably taking it shorter distances anyway. For future articulated bus orders, please consider a 3-door configuration, and thanks for your work and time.
This is the most impressive public comment we've ever gotten, except for, do you guys remember the one where the bee was like wandering around in the parking lot drinking the beer?
Okay.
This is 2. This is number 2 after that.
Yep.
Hi, this is Leslie Cash from Greenbelt, Prince George's County, Maryland. My message is, do not balance the WMATA budget on the backs of working class people. They already suffer low wages, long commutes, and irregular part-time hours. If WMATA cuts services for neighborhoods full of people who can't afford a car or a home near their work, groceries, or health care, what is the goal? Do WMATA's values require more traffic congestion, environmental pollution, and economic inequality, or do WMATA's values support access to affordable, reliable public transportation for residents who need it most and have no alternative. WMATA is a public utility, a steward of public transportation with a duty to transport all residents, not just wealthy ones, who can afford other transport options. This is not a matter of principle. It is not just a matter of principle. Successful businesses depend on workers accepting wages too low to afford a car, gas, and parking. PG County residents disproportionately commute long distances to fill service jobs that add to the quality of life of residents of wealthier counties. Show some leadership. Fulfill your mission. Provide public transportation. Thank you. Hi, this is Leslie.
Hello, this is Russell Dick. I enjoy buying Metro, and I don't want anything to be cut. I want it to make sense. I only want sensible cuts to the service. Service, that is not provided. So we get any cut from saying they're disastrous to the area. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Okay, thank you everyone who submitted comments. Now we'll move to our in-person speakers. And we have one speaker, Denise Rush. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, right. My name is Denise Rush. I'm Vice Chair of the AAC Committee, Vice Chair of the Metro Access Subcommittee, and Vice Chair of the National Federation of the Blind, Sligo Creek. It was good to hear a report from Metro Access. I've been attending these meetings for 24 years. I've never heard a report from Metro Access to the board like that. That was great. We know we're getting ready to have the hearings, and we haven't had any money put in the bank, so we have to face the cliff. Please know that the service is really important. It is my lifeline for 24 years. And when I say that, if you take it away, it's like husbands. You don't want them, but when you think about it, you can't live without them. I can't live without Metro Access, and there are many people who cannot live without Metro Access. It is the air that they breathe. It's the lifeline to make them live a decent life. Please don't cut the service. We need dedicated funding, and that's long overdue. I'm sorry we haven't had it. But if I have to get to the designated line, I'm not going to make it. Assisted living is out of the area for me. It's not affecting me now, but it's going to affect me. Please, when you think about, I know you may have to cut, think about the people who don't have the options to get in their cars, to catch the bus, to get to the line. It could be your family member, you, your friends. Remember that. It may not affect them now, but it's going to affect them later. Thank you.
Denise, you made some gentleman in the audience squirm in his seat a little bit.
Excuse me?
Comments.
I couldn't hear you.
I said you made some gentleman in the audience squirm a little bit in his seat back there.
Well, husbands are good. When I first met Randy, I said it's a marriage, and I hope I don't have to file for a divorce.
right, thanks, Denise. Okay, that ends our. All right, that ends our in-person testimony or comments. Next, we have a report from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Mr. Sheehan.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to be here. I always hate following Denise. I never really thought about paratransit being like a husband. But I guess that's quite the image. I think I might have been one of those people that might have been squirming. But let me first say, I will agree. Thank you very much for the Metro Access report. The famous Christian Blake, as you all called him, is sometimes infamous when he comes before our committee because we take him to task if he doesn't perform as we would like him to perform. But we do love him, and he does an excellent job. The type of customer service that was noted in the evening is something that we see all the time. So he is a treasure. He knows his job, and he's all about getting the job done. So he really is welcome in all of our committee meetings. In speaking with respect to the hearings that are coming up, we have done a good job of trying to get the word out to the disability community. We're hoping that you will see and get testimony from a lot of disabled people. And as Denise said, and I will say basically the same thing, we need to preserve the service area under all costs for Metro Access. We need to preserve the schedule because we can't work with the population that we're talking about has no plan B if paratransit isn't there. We have had individuals come to our meetings that say, if I lose paratransit, I can't get to work. And what do I do from there? And we don't have an answer. And that's what we basically have to say to people. So whatever happens, we need to keep the service area, and we need to keep the schedule for Metro Access. I think that we have indicated to individuals in the disability community that we need to fund WMATA totally. The revised budget, as we have heard, it looks like it's in pretty good shape. We think that that's important. And of course, we know that talks are going on with respect to a multi-year budget and how that will move forward. In the other areas that we have been working with over the last month, although the budget talks have taken up quite a bit of our time, regarding bus and rail, we looked at last month the bus islands, or what had been called the floating bus stops. Particularly in DC, there are 44 of them. I think that might be a very good project for me and others to take in the over the spring and summer to take a look at some of these floating bus stops. I think that they have made good recommendations with respect to them. I think there are some areas where they can be improved. So we hope to speak to the individuals, particularly who have put them in the DC area. With respect to Metro Access, we did receive a report on some new vans that we'll be taking a look at that I think are going to be more robust than the ones that were recently purchased. I think they'll be sturdier. They will give us quite a much better ride. I think they're going to be a little bit larger, which will help some individuals, in being able to move around those vans. So it's something that we will look at, I think, when they get a pilot of those vans going forward. So we, as it always happens with the Metro Access Group and AAC, we have been seeing prototypes of a lot of equipment, a lot of projects that come through, just like we did with the 8000 gangway cars. They ask us for advice, and we're very pleased that that trend is continuing. It's just the way we do business these days. And so we, from the AAC, say thank you for talking to us, for including us in your projects and plans, and anything else that we need direction from. We've got a bunch of bosses that you know how to get in touch with, and we'll take direction from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick.
Any questions for me?
Any questions for Patrick? Comments? All right. Thank you
Good.
so much,
Thank you.
Patrick. Nice seeing you. Next, we'll hear from our RAC chair, Mr. Leibowitz. Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon. So thank you again for allowing the RAC to present to the board. So the RAC has been deeply engaged in outreach amongst a significant number of riders as we compile information for our upcoming annual report, which should be full of recommendations for the board and management, hopefully this spring. Our annual report committee is being led by Lucas Haboski, a RAC member who's doing a phenomenal job at his task. So really looking forward to that aspect. Regarding the safety that we've heard about today, the plans, everything like that, I will tell you, based on the outreach that I talked about, riders will be very happy and approve and appreciative of kind of the safety plans and the messaging that goes along with it, to at least address what, you know, at least the perception of safety and things like that. I know that this is something that the RAC has recommended in the past, which is the police officers on buses and trains, and letting people know that police officers are indeed on the buses and trains, because we talked about the messaging earlier today. And I think the best message that we can give to riders is by them actually seeing MTP on the buses and trains, because I think that kind of alleviates a lot of the concerns and kind of gives the peace of mind, you know, whether it's perception or reality or not. Moving on to the budget, which is something, as you've heard me speaking ad nauseum about over the last several meetings, the RAC's efforts to engage in outreach and education, particularly to regional leaders and elected officials, regarding the rider perspective and the rider experience, and kind of all of this sausage making and budget discussions. So as you know, the RAC in January sent numerous letters to elected officials in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And so last week, the RAC sent follow-up letters to the same elected officials, including Senator Lucas in Virginia, where we expressed our encouragement and thanks for the budget commitments that were made in all three jurisdictions, and also I guess a polite plea that don't take the eye off the ball, and let's take this to the finish line, I think was the word that we had said, and riders are looking to our elected officials to complete the task of funding so that riders can have safe and reliable service, understanding that some of this is more short term. We will take that for now, because riders, there's a lot of stress that goes into this for riders, a lot of planning that goes involved, where people, we've talked about this, people looking, do they want to take jobs? Where do they want to work if they're looking for jobs? And then they want to look, okay, if the budget situation is in flux, do we want to look at remote work? Do we, even though we might not want to, there's a lot of in family, daycare, all the things we've already talked about. These are things that are really important to riders based on our outreach, based on kind of common sense, based on personal experience. And that's kind of where the letters are coming from. It's, it's not to point fingers, just say, riders are here, we exist, here's our perspective. And another part of our letters that we did included in there was, an invitation to, if elected officials want to hear from riders, the RAC can certainly make that happen, to send our members anywhere that needs to be, so that we can convey on behalf of riders the rider perspective and the rider experience. So that's a big part, and we'll continue to look at ways, and I guess I'd say the RAC, on behalf of riders, our view is that we're not going to rest easy until appropriations are signed and delivered, so that, obviously there's a lot of sausage making, which is, going ups and downs in the news. We get it. I think people in this region understand how things work, but we want to make sure that we keep things moving in the right direction for riders. And we're going to make sure that any action we do is in our lane and also, productive and proactive and that kind of thing. So that's all I've got. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Michael. Any questions or comments from Michael?
I just want to say thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Helfer, for being the board contact with the RAC.
She has been great. Thank you so much. We appreciate definitely appreciate you and all of you.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Michael. Okay, speaking of the RAC, we have one RAC appointment before us today. There is currently one vacancy on the RAC from the state of Maryland. To fill that vacancy, the board hereby appoints Ali Siddiqui for a term to expire in December 2024. I would like to move approval. Can I get a second? Seconded by Mr. Goldman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The appointment is approved. Congratulations, Mr. Siddiqui. We look forward to your participation on the RAC. I'd also like to take this moment to thank Mihaela Fernando, who Mr. Siddiqui is replacing on the RAC. Ms. Fernando served as the group's Maryland vice chair and also shared her technical skills with the group in producing the budget video they shared in December. We wish you all the best, Ms. Fernando. And as noted last month, the public comment period for the fiscal year 25 budget is now open. Next week, we have 4 public hearings, 3 in person, beginning at 6 p.m. and 1 afternoon virtual hearing. First is Monday on February 26th. That hearing will take place in Silver Spring at the Convention Center. On Tuesday, the 27th, the hearing will be held here at the WMATA headquarters in the District of Columbia, of course. February 28th, the Wednesday, the hearing will be held at the Arlington County Government Center in Arlington, Virginia. And finally, on the 29th, the Thursday, we'll have a virtual hearing, which will begin at 12 noon. All of those, of course, are accessible via Metro Rail and Metro Bus. And we encourage our customers and stakeholders to make their voices heard throughout this process. Also reminding folks, you can visit wmata.com/budget for more details. And finally, February is Black History Month. This observance was originally the inspiration of historian Carter Woodson, conceived as a celebration of the achievements of Black Americans during 1 week in February. The second week of February was chosen because it included the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. In 1969, the first month-long observance of Black history was held at Kent State University, produced by Black educators and Black United students. President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month in 1976, urging Americans to seize the opportunity to honor too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. This year, in 2024, Black History Month, the Black History Month theme is African Americans in the arts. It is impossible to overstate the broad and fundamentally definitive importance of centuries of African American contributions to the arts, both in the United States and throughout the world, in music, poetry, prose, film, theater, visual arts. These contributions which shape the character of the American contribution to global human culture. This month, let us take advantage of the opportunity to appreciate and enjoy the fullness of this legacy. I'd also like to take this moment. We've all been helping out the general manager and his team as we work with our jurisdictional partners on the fiscal issue. But recently, myself and Mr. Letourneau have had the opportunity with the general manager to meet with the governor and state officials down in Richmond. But I particularly want to point out Tom Webster, Yatunde, the CFO, Regina, and the GR team for all they've done, not only in Virginia, but also Maryland and the District of Columbia. For us, it's been really helpful to have Tom and Yatunde there. Our governor is a former venture capital CEO and speaks a different language at times and looks at things to a certain way. So to have that expertise and ability to talk that language is really, really helpful. And to have, that data available has really been extremely helpful. And Randy, you too have, done a good job, articulating everything in a concise and, sort of direct, understandable way, which I think has really been helpful, because a lot of times, a lot of people do not defend WMATA, and, we have to do it ourselves. And you've done a really good job doing that. So, and all the accomplishments over the last 18, 19 months. So really appreciate it. Turn it over to you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate it. The first theme here is kind of, if we go to the first slide, is really about what you just mentioned. We're all working so well together on this. I won't repeat all the board dates that the chair did, but needless to say, we've been working really hard across the entire region for arguably since July on this budget. It seems like the last week and a half has been the most, but it's really been a almost 6-7 month process here. I want to reiterate my thanks to our jurisdictional partners, all of our stakeholders, whether it's the CAO group, COG, elected officials across all 3 jurisdictions have been fantastic. Bills are moving in Maryland, bills are moving in Virginia, letters of support from DC. And then I want to take a quick moment here and thank the board. There's again, volunteer operation here. We're working long hours, but at least we get paid. You are sacrificing a lot of calls at night, a lot of weekends, a lot of some travel, other things to go see so many members of our regional kind of elected body, and you're really just very appreciated by the staff how much you're trying to help move this conversation forward. It's been, I think people have told me that have been here for a decade plus that this has been the most challenging budget year we've ever had. I think as our RAC chair said, we shouldn't count everything over until everything's signed and done. I think we're feeling more optimistic by the day, but obviously we still got to get this completed. I know Finance Chair Letourneau says this every time, but we certainly don't have a long-term solution either, and we got to keep reiterating that. Hopefully we can get some stability here in FY25 into 26, but the regional conversation of what we need Metro to be and the regional trends that we're to be, we got to start working with in earnest. So the second this board budget is approved, we're going to be really focused on that. Quite frankly, we're already pretty focused on it, but I think we need the whole region to come together there. So just my reiteration of thanks. Next slide here is I wanted to mention that we have last year, first ever time in Metro's history, we did this whole Art in Transit Earth Day competition. So I want to remind young artists that are out there, you have to February 29th to submit your art. Some of the board members were able to join us last year, plan on doing just like last year, where students around the area get to talk about what sustainability means to them and how Metro, is the only way this region's going to make its sustainability goals. Without Metro, all of the regional plans won't come together. And so this is a very fun community, family-centric activity that we're looking forward to do. Also this month, interestingly enough, I don't know if everyone's aware, on Tuesday, it was Metro's 57th birthday. And what's really cool about that is a little bit before my time, but I've seen the pictures, many of you have as well. Tuesday, 57 years ago was when LBJ, President Johnson, we had the first mock-up of the Metro train on the White House lawn. And he took pictures on it. And I think it's the last time a president was on a Metro system. If the president's not busy and he's watching this board meeting, you're certainly, sir, welcome to come, and we're happy to take you on a train any day you like. But we have something really exciting in store for our 8K prototype. And we'll be looking forward to being an announcement in early March about just an incredible family, community-centric event that I think LBJ, quite frankly, will be very proud of what we're about to pull off. So a little more details, a little cliffhanger for some people there, but it's going to be really great. Next slide, I just want to recognize our customer experience and engagement team. They won first place at the APTA Ad Wheel meeting earlier this month. It was for a comprehensive campaign and educational initiatives around our major blue and yellow line construction, cultivated presented in our Yellow Brick Road grand opening, as you'll see with the picture on the right. But really proud of this team. You know, we talk a lot about the people in uniform every day delivering great bus, rail access service, obviously then construction and other things. But there's an entire group of people here that supports all of that piece. And without all those pieces working together, we can't deliver the metro that this region not only expects, but deserves. So just kudos to their team and, congratulations. Lastly, I wanted to highlight a person that some people on this dais know very well, others may not, but to me, she's just a fantastic person. Transit advocate, transit champion, professional for her whole career, former WMATA employee at one time, and I've known her for a lot of years. She's been a friend, a supporter, a mentor, and Nuria Fernandez, the FTA administrator, retires officially, I think it's tomorrow, and on behalf of the whole organization, I just really want to thank her, wish her well. She's just a great person and has done a great job. So with that, Mr. Chair, that is my report, and just thanks again to all the staff for all they do every single day. The team is working really, really hard for the community, so thank you.
Yep. Any questions or comments for Mr. Clark? Okay, hearing none. Reports from the jurisdiction and VTC. I don't personally have anything, Mr. Letourneau.
No, just that as you said, Mr. Chairman, we do appreciate the work that both the administration and many members of the General Assembly have put into funding for Metro. The MVTC team, I really want to thank them as well. They've been very forceful advocates in Richmond for us during this process, which is continuing. Having regular conversations, both with myself and with Greg Potts and others at Metro to make sure that we're getting all the bases covered. We continue to get questions from jurisdictions. A lot of the local governments now are in their own budget processes. I've started mine in Loudoun. And many of those governments have put money in for Metro as we've requested based on the subsidy projections. So we're really appreciative of that. I think it's worth noting, that they are looking to see sort of the shared sacrifice that we're working on with our budget, with great appreciation for our employees, but coming, from that quarter, as well as from the riders in terms of the fares and other places. So that's just some of the feedback I've been continuing to get from the Virginia jurisdictions, but appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. WSTC, Mr. Drummer, Mr. Cole.
Nothing to report.
Okay. The District of Columbia, Dr. Lowe.
Yeah, just one item. I thought my board colleagues might be interested to hear a little bit about some data that DDOT recently shared about the results of some of the road redesigns that have been done with bus priority treatments. And it's really impressive stuff. So on Minnesota Avenue, which does not even have a dedicated bus lane, this is like other bus priority treatments, bus travel time went down 17% in the southbound direction with just these other bus priority options deployed. Crashes went down 35% on the corridor. Average speed.
What was the time frame? Do you mind?
Oh, of this evaluation. This is comparing October 2019 versus October 2023. Average speed went down 50%. And obviously the bus is going to run better when there's less chaos happening from the cars too. It is really striking how the redesign of this corridor improved the experience for all users. But I know there's a lot of regional interest right now in how to get better OpEx out of bus. And I think that it's been said, but it needs to be said more times to more people in more places that there's a real opportunity here with bus prioritization treatments in order to deliver better financial results in addition to these better safety and performance results, which are also great. And DDOT got similar results from bus priority treatments on other corridors. H Street Northwest, 11 to 15% reduction in travel time. 8th Street Northeast, 4 to 11% reduction. I mean, these are, in most cases, double-digit savings. And we should be going after this harder. I'm really proud of the district under Mayor Bowser's leadership for doing this, but I think we need more jurisdictions getting on board with how to get more out of our same friend, the bus.
Thank you. Federal government, Ms. Klein?
I got distracted because those numbers were so exciting. That's great. That's really fantastic because there is some data from other parts of the country, but we need some here, and now we have it. So that's great. Nothing except I just want to, on behalf of the federal members of the board, echo what Mr. Clark just said about Nuria Fernandez. I think we're sort of having mixed emotions right now as we anticipate that she's leaving FTA tomorrow. And just for those who may not know who she is, the Federal Transit Administration is the funder, regulator, and supporter of transit across the country. And Nuria has been the leader twice, both during this administration and also at the end of the Clinton administration in the late 90s. And she had brought extensive experience to FTA from transit agencies here in Chicago, in New York, as well as in the Santa Clara Valley, where she was the general manager of VTA. She also chaired APTA, leading the trade association for all transit agencies in the country. She just had such a wealth of experience, and she took over FTA at such a challenging time in the beginning of 2021 as transit was really facing kind of an existential crisis. Where are we going from here? Her leadership has been both inspiring and I think also very pragmatic, kind of grounded in the reality of where transit systems find themselves. So like you, Randy, and the whole agency, I think we will miss her, and we wish her the best of luck. And Dr. Helfer.
We will stand adjourned. I'll move now to a board executive session in accordance with the bylaws. I, Paul Smedberg, request that the board convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions or the federal government. And C, personnel or labor issues, including discussion of labor contracts, labor negotiations, consideration or interview of candidates for employment, and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, or resignation of individuals. And H, the development of WMATA position of strategy on pending or proposed federal or state legislation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much for being here today.